And welcome into Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the show. I forgot to put our logo up at the beginning. Oh, well, got to see me for a little bit. Welcome into our first Sunday show of the 2015 season. Usually that is something we do in January. Not the case this year. We have added Sunday shows to the Hoopsville lineup for November and December. Yes, we will continue them all the way through the end of the season. We won't be on absolutely every Sunday. As I start this show, my instinct is to say that we won't be on the air next week due to the Hoopsville Classic. We'll be doing a ton of interviews at the Hoopsville Classic. We may take the 22nd off. That being said, the 29th is certainly tempting because it's Thanksgiving weekend to take off. But at the same time, we don't have as much going on that weekend, so there's an outside chance. We'll make that decision maybe by the end of the show or early this week coming on when our next Sunday show will be. After that, we'll be on the air every Sunday through December 20th. Then we will take a break for the holidays and be back on the air 2 weeks later to restart Hoopsville. So we were going to have about a 3.5-week break, I think, on Hoopsville if we didn't start Sundays. The last show we could have possibly done was Thursday the 10th due to the Gallardi and Stag Bowl responsibilities that I have. Hard to do Hoopsville in the middle of that. I might have had to pre-record some things. And long story short, that would have been December 10th. The next time we would have been on the air was January 3rd. So 3.5 weeks. So we've added the Sunday shows. We want to get a little bit more momentum. Want to not miss some things that are going on this season, or any season in particular. We feel like we don't get enough covered in the beginning of the year on Thursday. So chatted with the football guys, and despite today being a major football day, we are on the air nonetheless. The brackets have come out. And we certainly know the excitement that surrounds that. But thanks to everybody, we are on the air here with basketball. So hope you are going to enjoy the show. Lots to cover. If you're not listening to us live, you are listening to us on our podcast. We certainly appreciate you doing that. Obviously, the show is archivable on demand, on video, and on audio. The audio is available on SoundCloud, but we thank you nonetheless. Again, Sunday shows here for Hoopsville between now and the end of 2015, and then we'll restart in 2016 as well. So something new this year, more programs to give everybody a chance to follow Division III basketball a little bit better, and we hope you get to enjoy them along the way. Have a lot to cover here tonight. We have some upsets to talk about. We may or may not get Ryan Scott on the air here in a matter of, or later in the program. He went to the Wesley game late today. Virginia Wesley, number 2 team, loses to Wesley, who comes from 15 down to win that game. Wesley, with a new coach, has lost some talent. I don't think a lot of people expected them to make some waves this year. They've already made a wave, beating Virginia Wesleyan. By the way, Virginia Wesleyan has lost to Wesley on other occasions. Now to better Wesley teams. But this is the trend. We have seen quite a few Division III teams lose to start the season. And I said this in my Top 25 blog. I think I said it in the last show. The parity in Division III has gotten deeper and deeper in the last few years. And this year, it certainly seemed like it was going to be very deep. And I think we've already started to see that with some of the upsets. Now, the upsets are twofold here. Partly the upsets are because you do have the parity, and you've got these teams that don't look like on paper should line up. But I think in reality, you've got better teams than you expect. What happened with the Virginia Wesleyan game, that's not necessarily going to fit that mold. The other reason is teams may be highly ranked who maybe don't deserve to be highly ranked or don't feel like they should be highly ranked, but they're highly ranked because, geez, it's chaotic. It's nuts. It's cray-cray, to use a local, more not modern slang. But it's so, is Virginia Wesleyan really the second best team in the country? Is Whitworth really the third best team in the country? Is Catholic really the sixth best team? Mount Union the seventh best? I don't know. When I voted, I had some of those teams that high and some of them I didn't. And now they've lost, and not all the teams I mentioned lost, by the way. I'm just saying the teams that have lost have lost. So the question is that because they're too high ranked, or is it because of parity? I think it's a combination of both, and I don't know if the teams are too highly ranked. I think they're top 25 teams, but maybe they didn't need to be that high. I don't know. It's wide open this year, and I think it's a little on the crazy side. And I think, and I said this to Pat off air a little while ago, I think personally this is going to be what we see the rest of the season. We're going to see craziness the rest of the season, bar none. It's just going to be what happens, especially on the men's side. Let's look at the men's side. Back on the 13th, nothing major. Augustana rolled through La Crosse, 88-60. A lot of people said they watched that game. Pretty impressed. Whitworth, we'll talk to their head coach coming up. Snuck past Laverne in a midnight game out there on the West Coast. Babson had a somewhat easy game, though low scoring. Marietta had an easy game. WPI upset Eastern Connecticut on the first game of the season, 60-50. Rather low scoring, especially for an econ team like that. Emory had a little bit more of a battle with Piedmont than maybe they expected to have. Those are just the ranked teams. There was a whole mess of games. We could go through all of them if we have to. Catholic had a bit of a battle with Newman, only beat him by 11 on the 14th. St. Thomas had a 14-point win over Eau Claire. Mount Union got thumped by William Patterson. I voted for William Patterson in my top 25. I think they're going to be good, if not the class of the NJAC this year. I think Richard Stockton, them, maybe Ramapo are going to be in the run. There's another team in the NJAC I feel like I'm missing that I'm not putting my finger on. I'm one of the Rutgers teams. I think the NJAC's going to be a great battle. I think William Patterson's a very good team. Mount Union losing by 22 is a surprise. That's a big... I don't know if Mount Union just wasn't ready or what. But again, that also might be Mount Union's a little too high ranked at 7. But still an upset there. 100-78. William Patterson gets the win. Stevens Point barely snuck past Superior in a matchup of former conference opponents. Babson had an easier time of it the next night. Ohio Wesleyan barely got past Otterbein. Eastern Connecticut rallied to finally win against Western New England. Chicago, I watched the end of the Chicago North Park game. Watched the last 8 minutes of that game. I'm not going to exactly say North Park won that game. I was impressed with North Park, but I was also, Chicago looked a little out of sorts, especially at the end, made a couple mistakes as they were rallying, looked like they could get past North Park, then made a couple of untimely mistakes and lost that game. Hats off to North Park. Great win. I don't know what that means for Chicago. I don't think Chicago's a bad team. I don't think North Park's that good, but another upset. And I don't mean to say North Park's not that good. I mean, they're not number 15 in the country. You know, Chicago's number 17. So it's not like North Park's 15. Interesting opening the season. I just wonder if teams struggled. Dickinson lost to Cabrini. Let's be honest. Cabrini's without Aaron Walton Moss. Yes, they bring back a ton of players who were freshmen last year. They got experience. But this is a young team. Dickinson, did they lose more than we thought they lost, maybe? Was Wixon really that big a key and a cog? Or does Alan Soretti have this team really in okay shape? By the way, you know, Dickinson will be at the Hoopsville Classic. One of their opponents is Stevenson. Stevenson on Friday lost to York. York was 5-20 last season. Not sure what happened there. We've seen some incredibly crazy results. Benedictine wins on a buzzer beater against Illinois Wesleyan. If I can find the link, I will play it for you. Crazy. Just nuts. Just not results that we expected to see this season. And I don't know what to make of it. I'm not sure if this means that we're over betting on some teams, we're under betting on others. Maybe some teams are better than we think. Other teams aren't as good as we think. Maybe even more than that. It's just that parity has made things a little bit more wide open, and teams are a little bit unsettled to start the season. I will try and find this link. Forgive me as I quickly look for it. I saw it earlier. Heck of a buzzer beater, by the way. Off-balance rebound scenario, and nailed it. Really impressive, to say the least. Looking for it. Just forgive me. I saw it earlier. I knew I should have made a mental note and held on to the link, but I thought I could find it rather easily, and it's turning out I am dead wrong as I continue to look for it. But you know, that's what we've seen. This is just on the men's side. Women's side, it seems to have been a little bit more steady. A little less chaotic, maybe, but I'm not positive. I'm just scanning here, and I'm unfortunately. Oh, there it is. All right, let's see if we can call this up for you. This is the Benedictine Illinois Wesleyan finish. We'll call it up, and here we go.
Game with 16 seconds left, and Benedictine bringing up the floor. Dotson. Guarded by Pennington. Dotson out front. Are they going to isolate him? Here comes Johnson out front to set a screen for Dotson. Now rolls to the basket. Dotson forces up a shot. No good. And Johnson gets the rebound, puts it in at the buzzer.
Did you see it? Let's see it again. Watch the ending again.
Dotson now rolls to the basket. Dotson forces up a shot, no good. And Johnson gets the rebound, puts it in.
From his hip. From his hip. He threw that up from his hip. And Benedictine beats Illinois Wesleyan. So, unbelievable. And that's what we're going to probably see a lot of this season. I suspect we're going to get quite a bit of parity this year. It's just how it's going to break down. But really, unbelievable finish there. And again, lots of results like that. We'll probably talk about some more. We'll maybe get a chance to talk about the Virginia Wesleyan Wesley game later, depending on some timing and stuff, but we'll see. Our guest tonight, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, let's get through him. Matt Logie from number 3 Whitworth will be coming up here shortly. We'll also talk to Ted Riverso, I apologize, from Augsburg, new women's coach there. Team makes the MIAC playoffs for the first time last year. Their coach, unfortunately, dies of kidney cancer in late August. Ted is hired mid-September, a friend of Bill McKee's, the former coach. We'll talk to Ted about taking over the program, what he expects, how long he expects to be there, and what he thinks this program can do, and the transition, how difficult this transition is. Maybe not totally difficult, but just the challenges that they face. We'll also talk to Brooklyn men's basketball coach. Beat Case Western Reserve. You beat a UAA team, you're on good step, no matter where they stand. They come out of the Case Western Reserve tournament, which I had my eye on because my alma mater was there. They come out of that with 2 wins. And they're going to a bunch of tournaments this year. It looks like they've decided to step up their out-of-conference more than maybe people realize. And I think Brooklyn might be a sleeper in the Atlantic. I could be wrong, but that's my feeling. There's just this gut feeling tells me Brooklyn's worth watching. We'll talk to their head coach coming up. And another good team made a coaching change in the offseason. We'll talk to UT Tyler women's basketball coach coming up here on the show. Former All-American at Hardin Simmons taking over UT Tyler, who has certainly been NCAA bound quite a bit recently. We'll talk to her about the team and their chances. Also coming up, we'll talk Great Lakes basketball. The man who has his own podcast about Great Lakes basketball, Ryan Whitnable, will join me, talk about the men's side of the Great Lakes. And again, we may hear from Ryan Scott about the Virginia Wesley game. We'll see if our schedules can coordinate to get him on the show. Going to take a break, but before we take the break, one more piece of video I want to show. We mentioned on Thursday's show that this weekend, Hiram and Mount St. Joe women were going to get together, play once again, and again at Xavier, as part of a series of games in honor of Lauryn Hill at Xavier. And you remember the wonderful moment last year where Lauryn Hill hit the opening shot with these two teams. Incredible moment to start the game for them. Definitely worth seeing from their point of view, and here it is. Great moment to say the least. Pass down to the post where Lauren was, put the ball down where she was, and circled the ball. Terrific moment there at Xavier. And hats off to Mount St. Joseph and Hiram yet again, showing the class that Division III students are. Going to take a break. When we come back, Matt Logie joins us from Whitworth. Don't forget, you can interact with us on Twitter at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at d3hoops.com, or join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. Matt Logie coming up. Ted Riverso from Augsburg will come up as well. That's all ahead just this hour. We, of course, have the Brooklyn, UT Tyler head coaches along with a report from the Great Lakes. It's all coming up here on Hoopsville. You listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com, the National Association of Basketball Coaches. More Hoopsville right after this.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. and we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Division III schools offer academic scholarships instead of athletic scholarships. This really puts the focus that the student athlete needs to maintain that GPA.
I did receive a non-athletic scholarship upon entering school.
I got the presidential scholarship, which was huge for me.
I think there's more opportunities for academic scholarships in Division III. A lot of people pick schools just based on the sport and don't get that experience.
Being a Division III athlete and developing my leadership skills has definitely put my name out there and helped me get more recognition on campus, but more recognition nationwide. I did win the Jostens Trophy, which is based on leadership, academics, and then how well you do on the court.
I'm also the Schwartz Scholar of my class. Schwartz Scholarship is basically a scholarship that is given to a student who's identified as a likely leader.
At the end of the day, it won't matter how they play on the field, it will matter how they do in the classroom.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you are enjoying the first Sunday show of the season. Obviously, we don't normally do these until January, but new for the 2015-16 season and our 13th on the air for the entire season, 16th in totality. We have added Sunday shows to November and December. We didn't want to step on football's toes. Of course, we're kind of stepping on football's toes this year. There's a lot going on in football tonight, but we appreciate you taking the time to at least enjoy the show live. If you're not and you're watching it on the podcast or on demand on YouTube, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to do that. We realize that being that it's a busy Sunday in NCAA Division III, that watching this on another time is certainly probably a better option. So thank you nonetheless. Have a lot ahead, obviously. We're going to be talking to several more coaches around the country. And we look forward to having you on the show with us as we work our way along. You can always interact with us, ask us questions, suggest coaches to us if you want. You can always do that on Twitter at D3Hoopsville or use the hashtag Hoopsville. Email us hoopsville at d3hoops.com or join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. Our first guest tonight, we're going to jump out to the West Coast, an area I got to finally visit recently. Not where this school is, but up in that area. Beautiful part of the country. I look forward to going back for some basketball in my future, but nonetheless, we're going to talk to a team who is pretty highly ranked in the top 25, maybe higher than anybody anticipated, including themselves. But let's get word from them first. Joining us on the Hoopsville hotline, the number 3 ranked preseason poll Whitworth Pirates, and Coach Matt Logie joins me on the show. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Appreciate you taking the time. First and foremost, highest ranking ever for Whitworth in the preseason polls. What was your reaction when the poll came out?
Well, I think, with what we had coming back this year from last year's team, four starters in the backcourt and most of our bench, we expected to have a great team this year, and we're really looking forward to hopefully living up to those high expectations. But we weren't shocked, but certainly it's certainly an exciting thing for our program and our school to get that respect nationally.
Certainly, Whitworth is synonymous with winning. Before you and with you, you guys have been winning. You're 118 in your 4 seasons, now 101-18, thanks to a win against Laverne to start the season. We'll talk about that game in a minute. When it comes to Whitworth, you guys are expected to win, but you guys, for many reasons, have just fallen short of that goal of getting to Salem, whether it be because, you are in the Northwest, which requires you to do just a little bit more travel, or because of the way the tournament's set up, you're bound to run into a juggernaut at some point in time. I know you had hopes to get there in 2013, and the juggernaut turned out to be unranked Mary Hardin Baylor, which got all the way to the championship game. Is that a frustration, or is that just we understand our situation, we got to take advantage of those when they come along?
Well, I think each year is a different journey. We've had some really good basketball teams here that are certainly, Final Four caliber teams. But getting to Salem, getting to the Final Four is not an easy thing to do. The road that we have to take is different than the road that a lot of other schools take, and that's just the way it is. So The frustrating thing is how close we've been to advancing. The last 2 years we've lost by 1 point. On the road in the NCAA tournament second round, and we feel like we've never been that far away. We just haven't quite done it yet. So it's something that our guys are excited to take on as a challenge. This group in particular was all brought to Whitworth with dreams of a national championship and playing for playing in a Final Four, and they're working hard towards those goals.
Before we get to the schedule, let's talk about the group. As you mentioned, you got a lot of upperclassmen on this one, as you say, kind of built towards this season in many ways. You've got, 5 seniors I've got on this, plus a whole host of juniors behind them, 4 or 5 as well. Certainly have the experience on this squad. Is this a Salem or bust type of season?
Well, I think obviously at our level, there's a whole lot of different ways to evaluate success and why we do what we do. Our goal every year is to win the Northwest Conference and get into the tournament. We do set a goal to win a national championship once we're into the NCAA tournament. I don't think there's anything that says we can't do that. It's possible, but to say that our season would be a failure if we didn't accomplish that wouldn't be accurate either. So, it's just one of those things you got to focus on the process, especially at this point in the year early on, and try to build a team that's capable of living up to their potential and reaching those types of ceilings. And
probably the reason you guys got so high an expectation this year is because you bring back your 3 big juggernauts in scoring. Christian Jerlina, Kenny Love, which is on the all D3Hoops.com Classic all-name team, and George Vale. 14.8 from Jerlina, Love at 12 points, and Vale from 11.3 just last season. They all come back, as you said, plus everybody else practically on this squad. Lots of experience, but I find it interesting when I look at your out-of-conference schedule. It seems like you kind of have a mix of you're stuck in the Northwest, so you take what you can get, along with some familiar foes, and then testing yourself just a little bit. It seems like a little bit of a mix this year.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's our senior is George Valley.
Valley, thank you.
In terms of pronunciation, yeah. Our group of veterans, they played a lot together. We also have a senior starting point guard, Matt Stodaker, who joined our program last year, so he's entering year 2. So we do have a lot of continuity in the backcourt, which is always nice. In terms of our schedule, we're constantly trying to put the best schedule we can together, the most competitive schedule that we can. I think our program and our university has done a great job of allowing us to go out and play the types of games that we can when those opportunities arise, like the D3 Hoops Classic, and getting a chance to play schools like Mary Hardin Baylor and Calvin again. Colorado College is one of the better programs in their conference. We're going to play them twice, and then we try to pick up a little bit of all the conferences in the West region. So we've got Hamline and we've got a couple of the SCIAC schools, but you're somewhat right in the fact that we kind of get what we get. People that want to travel out to the West Coast and take a trip. Some years that's St. Thomas, and some years it's not. So we don't always have the same type of control over our strength of schedule. And even in some regards, last year I thought we had a really good schedule on paper, and then some of the non-conference teams that we scheduled, themselves scheduled really hard schedules. Trinity, for one, had been a perennial NCAA tournament team, and just kind of hit a down year, and in that down year also happened to have one of the hardest non-conference schedules I've ever seen. So, we can't control everything that goes into that, but we do our best.
When you look at this out of conference, you talk about Laverne. Of course, Laverne, you guys started the thing. Listen, you guys are known for your midnight madnesses in some cases for preseason. You doubled down and did a midnight game with Laverne. I just love to know what the atmosphere was like and what that experience was like.
Well, it was a great atmosphere. We had about 1,000 students in the building, and And they were excited. We had coffee and donuts for everybody, and got a lot of publicity. Here in Spokane, a bunch of the news stations did their nightly newscasts from the field house, and
nice.
just created a really neat environment. It was a lot of fun to kick off the season that way, and to be able to be the first West Coast team on the court in action, and to see the way our students rallied and supported it was pretty cool.
Yeah, you beat them 87-80, probably in a tougher game than you may have expected. Maybe playing at midnight has something to do with that. Of course, you got Caltech coming up. They just beat Occidental yesterday to take the lead in the conference, believe it or not, early on in the season. So, they may not be as much of an, and I don't mean this derogatorily, but a cakewalk like they normally been. They've been progressively getting better. You mentioned about Hamline. You mentioned playing Colorado College twice. That's before we even get to the D3Hoops.com Classic. Of course, you also have a game against Millsaps in there. We know Millsaps is trying to improve their strength of schedules as well. So an interesting kind of mix of teams in there, as we talked about. Is the Colorado College doubleheader just because, you know what, you just couldn't find that other game?
That kind of happened from the result of a return game that Colorado College owed one of our conference opponents, George Fox. George Fox went out to their tournament last year, and so Colorado was going out there this year, and we were looking for 3 games at that point when we were figuring out our schedule. And since they were going to be in our region and we could travel over to Portland to kind of fill in that tournament for George Fox, it just kind of worked out. So one great thing about being isolated is all the conference schools out here work together to try to help each other out and get as many games as we can.
I noticed as we talked last Thursday with Augustana's head coach, Gray Giovanni, he's making a West Coast swing. I noticed he's avoiding you, though. He figured he played enough top-ranked teams in his schedule. Whitworth wasn't on his schedule. I told him that might be a good thing.
Yeah, I actually reached out to Greg when I heard that they were coming out to see if they did need another game as a part of their trip, and they were full at that time. But obviously, they've got a great team coming back. We would have loved to have the opportunity to play them in the Northwest, and if we're fortunate enough to get into the NCAA tournament and in advance, maybe there'll be an opportunity down the road.
Of course, you're going to be heading to the Hoopsville Classic. The D3Hoops.com Classic. I got both of them on my mind right now. At the South Point Arena in Las Vegas, you'll take on Calvin. You'll take on Mary Hardin-Baylor. I believe that'll be Mary Hardin-Baylor's 3rd game in 4 days, as they picked up an extra game out there due to their schedule as well. How do you prepare for that event? I mean, it's not like you're not familiar with that event, but how do you get the guys ready for that event when you're going to play some pretty top-notch squads there, even if they're not preseason ranked, even if maybe they're not having the best of seasons or they're flying under the radar?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of basketball to be played between now and then, and I just know from our experience, playing Mary Hardin-Baylor a couple of years ago, playing Calvin in my first year in 2012, that those are really good programs, and so that was exactly who we wanted to play when we signed up for that event. I think one of the things that we like about events like that is the back-to-back setup is very consistent with the way we play our conference games, and so from that standpoint, it's a good test to simulate what it's like going to Tacoma and playing UPS and PLU on a back-to-back, or going to Portland and playing Lewis and Clark and Pacific. So that's part of the reason that those things are valuable as well.
Well, again, of course, the conference is up for grabs. You guys clearly are the favorite in the conference. Last year, only had 1 loss. You were a game ahead of Whitman, who certainly was nip and tuck with you guys at 20-6 overall in the season. Lewis and Clark was in the mix, Willamette, etc. What do you expect from the conference this season?
Well, the conference returns a lot. I think this will be one of the stronger years on the whole in terms of the depth of teams and caliber that you'll see out there. Whitman has had a lot of success as of late, and are always a tough game for us as far as the rivalry is concerned. Lewis and Clark and Denari have been in the conference championship game now 2 of the last 4 years, I believe, or last year, and then we played them in the conference tournament the other 3 years in the semifinals. So they're consistently, towards the top of the conference and return a great deal from last year's team, who we played in the conference championship. Then you've got UPS and Willamette. Willamette returns a lot of guys from their conference tournament team last year, and UPS has been in the conference tournament every year that I've been here since 2012, except for last year. So I think the conference at the top is really strong, but we're excited about what we've got, and hopefully we can continue to improve and prepare ourselves for another run.
And of course, had some changes in the last few years. Obviously, Linfield changing head coaches is a turn that they may be taking on the men's program just a little bit more seriously this year as well, of course. Coach, I know that it is what you guys can do out there. The women on the other side certainly have gotten a lot of attention in the sense of the conference. George Fox certainly getting all the way to the championship game and has gotten there a few times. Granted, having a few more teams in conference has allowed at least some of the NCAA tournament to be played out on the Northwest coast. Is there a sense on the men's side that we'd like to improve things to give ourselves those chances? Is there a sense of, hey, how can we as a group do better?
I don't know. I don't know that that's something that that our conference can control. To be honest, at the same token, if you are getting more conference schools into the NCAA tournament, you're just going to end up playing them in the first round anyway.
Yeah.
So it for all intents and purposes, it doesn't really matter. You're just having another conference tournament. So I don't mind going on the road, but I'm also aware enough of what that means. When you look at the Ken Palm statistics for Division I, it's a home game is worth about 5 points, and I don't think there's really any argument to the advantage that creates for teams when you're talking about a national tournament. I wish personally that the national tournament would be played at neutral sites like they do in baseball and soccer and some of the other Division III sports, where they take a little bit of the cost out of it in terms of trying to get their money back with ticket sales and try to have a true national championship tournament that is a little bit more neutral base as the other divisions are. But that being said, it is what it is, and our guys embrace that challenge, and we want to do it the hard way.
Well, I certainly look forward to seeing what the season is for you guys. I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys in Las Vegas coming up between Christmas and New Year's as well, and then obviously conference action will be the focal point after that. And I assume you're glad the season's already tipped off. It certainly felt like it was coming for a while. Quick question before we let you go, though, is obviously some rule changes into the season. You played one game, don't know how many of them really became factors, but how have you guys adjusted to the 30-second shot clock, the new 10-second back rule, and any of the other twists and turns that the men have put in place?
To be honest, I haven't noticed that great of a change thus far. We've never really played late into the shot clock on offense.
True.
So that hasn't really affected us in any way, shape, or form. We like to get out in transition and attack, right away. And so we haven't noticed that as much. I think you'll see some teams employ more three-quarter court zones and some slow down tactics to try to get that shot clock down around 20 when the ball kind of gets into offense. But I think it's overall in terms of the way it's going to be officiated and the hand checks and freedom of movement, I think that's good for the game. I think the game of basketball is designed to have flow and pace and movement, and so I'm excited about that aspect of it. I think one of the things that they'll clean up the most that I've seen a little bit improvement on is just the out of control offensive drives off the dribble, where they're creating all the contact into the defense, and yet the defense gets called for a foul. I think they've recognized that was taking place, and the pressure that was, the undue pressure that was putting on defense that was trying to hold their ground. So I think from that standpoint, we'll see some improvement.
Well, very good. I appreciate you coming on the air here on the show. As always, good luck the rest of the season. Of course, that means good luck in just a matter of days against Caltech. And as I said, look forward to see you in Vegas. As always, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
Well, just look forward to another great season of Whitworth basketball. And when you've got a group of juniors and seniors like this, you really enjoy kind of sitting back and letting them kind of lead themselves and be a part of that journey. And I think one of the great things about Division III basketball is, you see so many bright spots and bright stories, and so I'm looking forward to taking part in that again.
Very good. Well, thanks so much, Coach. Take care of yourself, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Matt Logie joining us here from Whitworth. Again, preseason number 3. They're off to a 1-0 start. Big game against Caltech, and I mean that seriously coming up. They'll then play non-Division III Northwest from Washington on the 21st, and then head to Colorado College. Thanksgiving weekend, play Hamline and Colorado College, and then the rest of the way as we described. Appreciate Coach coming on the air. When we come back, we'll head back towards the center of the country, talk to a women's basketball coach who's returning to Division III after a long time. Augsburg's women's coach joins us here on the show. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com, National Association of Basketball Coaches. More Hoopsville right after this.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Division III allows you to be able to give yourself to other things. Not even just participate in them, but really get involved with them if you want to.
There's a lot of interaction. It's not just sitting back, taking notes. You're actually doing hands-on things and better preparing yourself for your major.
Choosing a Division III school, I've had the opportunity to develop my leadership skills and to be more involved on campus.
Division III in athletics, affords students the opportunity not only to participate in intercollegiate athletics at a competitive level, but also gives them the opportunity to, engage in the other interests in their campus and in their lives outside of that sport and outside of the academics on the campus.
And to have opportunity to have time to join clubs and being able to play basketball, it allows you to just be able to do everything you want to do. I wouldn't change it for the world.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Our first Sunday show of the season. Normally that is reserved for January, but as we've been talking about all show long, we've added our Sunday shows to the mix in November and December. We'll talk about more of that later in the show as well. If you've got questions for us or our guests, have suggestions for us, want to interact with us in general, whatever the case may be, don't forget us on Twitter at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. You can also join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville, and join us, or you can email us too, Hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Of course, all that information scrolling at the bottom of your screen. I know we're competing with football, but that doesn't mean there isn't a lot to talk about in Division III, and certainly the West region. We just talked to Whitworth out of there on the men's side. On the women's side, certainly plenty to talk about there as well. We go into Minnesota for our next story, and it's out of Augsburg on the women's side. Unfortunately, earlier this year, not that long ago, team lost their head coach, Bill McHugh, who died from cancer on Thursday, August 27th. He was battling kidney cancer, was 62 years old, and they quickly found a coach within a month, and they went to an old Division III stalwart, as you could say. So joining us on the Hoopsville hotline is that stalwart, Ted Riverso. See, I knew I was going to screw it up, Ted. Riverso. Ted Riverso joins us from Augsburg. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville, first and foremost.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. I'm going to take offense to the calling me the old Division III coach. Come
yeah.
on, huh?
Well, it's, a fair point. A fair point. Let's just say long-time former head coach. I spent a long time in Division III. Obviously, at St. Thomas, for anybody who knows your resume, certainly turned the Tommies into a stalwart, a tough team there in the late 80s and into the 90s, and you coached there until 99 before moving on. If you became an assistant coach up at Division I and now returned to Division III, you were at Minnesota from 06 to 14. What drew you to this job? What drew you to coming back to Division III and taking on this Augsburg squad?
Well, my initial interest in Augsburg and in Division III was that Bill was here, and Bill and I have been friends since college. I knew him well. We had quite a few interactions while I was at Minnesota and he was at Augsburg the last 4 years. He would come to our practices and we would pick each other's brains and talk basketball quite a bit. So when I knew he was sick, I was concerned for his health, and we stayed close. And obviously, knew what was going on at Augsburg through Bill. And then when his passing came about, I was approached and was interested. It was a nice fit for me, the school, the program, and a bittersweet appointment, but one that I felt we could honor his memory and try to build upon the foundation that he has started here.
Oh, and McHugh, he had done quite a bit in the last few years. They made the MIAC postseason playoffs for the first time ever last season. Finished 9-9 in the conference, 15-12 overall. For that program, a huge turnaround. This is a program we're used to seeing single-digit wins from. In 2012, they had 14. They fell back to 9 in 2013, but were back to 12 the following year and 15, as we said last year, with a winning record. Big turnaround for him. And I know he's missed, but it definitely seems like, from what you say, you hope to continue that at the program.
We do. We really want to build. I think it takes time to build a foundation, and I think that they have done that here. And now I think it's time to build the building, and to continue and build upon what has been started, and that's our goal. We hope to dive right in and start this year. It's going to be an adjustment year for everybody, for the players with a new coach, for the coach with a new team, and for the addition of we have a number of new players in the program. So, all those things going on, it may take some time, but I'm optimistic for the year.
You took over the program about mid-September or so. How hard is it to get up to speed with... Now, granted, there isn't like they were having practices already, but how hard is it to get up to speed with a team that, A, you weren't necessarily familiar with, B, was already in school and kind of coming together as a unit, and C, is obviously still dealing with the loss of their head coach?
I think all of those are factors. I think that initially what we tried to do is just build a relationship with the players and, getting to know them getting to know me off the court, just, as a person and what they could expect from me and my personality and vice versa. Who were they and what were their interests and what were their majors and, how did they like Augsburg? So, just building a relationship with the players was the initial component, and then starting practices. And, they were accustomed to doing things a certain way. I had familiarity with Bill and his system, so, that part made it a little bit easier. But I still, have other ideas of things that I'd like to do. And, my personality is not the exact same as Bill, so so that was, a bit of an adjustment as well for the kids. But it's a work in progress, and I think right now both sides are enjoying the journey.
I was going to say the one significant here is a lot of coaches get hired late or early spring to late spring, even early summer. They get a chance to at least tell the veterans, hey, here's what I plan to do. Maybe they can send them ideas of the system they want to put in place so they can study it over the summer, or they get a chance to see it. You literally got a chance to start telling people what you wanted to do while incorporating stuff that the former coach had with only weeks before the first practices? There's got to be a bit of a learning curve, not only for the team getting used to you, but for you to not make that adjustment too harsh.
Absolutely. I mean, I got asked that point blank, or what's this going to be like?
Yeah.
Are we going to become a Division I team? That kind of thing. And not only that is that our top 4 returning players from last year were not here till 3 days ago.
Right.
I had 2 in volleyball, 1 in soccer, and 1 had a concussion. So, basically the returning players who were the backbone of that group a year ago, I have only seen for 3 days. So it's each day brings a new challenge, and it's been fun. I mean, the kids are interested. I'm interested, and the camaraderie has started to grow. So I'm excited about what the future holds.
You, as we said, coached at St. Thomas from 84 to 99. Not too shabby, 337 and 80 record. You moved on, became an assistant coach at Minnesota, basically between then and now, with a little bit of gaps here and there at the beginning and the end. How much, what did you learn in the Division I ranks that you're hoping to be able to use at the Division III ranks, and how much? And granted, you've only had 1 game and a month of practices, but how much has changed since you've left?
Oh, a lot of things have changed. I mean, it's changed everywhere. I mean, let's start with the rules.
Yeah, that's true. You're entering a great season too, aren't you?
Yeah. So you're coming in, and it doesn't even look the same.
No.
So that part was an adjustment, but that's a component that everybody is dealing with, not just us
right
here. But Division I changed in just the time that I was the 8 years that I was there, and coming back to Division III, you see a real change in the landscape here as well in terms of the obligations of the coaches, the teams, the members of the teams, and the kinds of things they're interested in, and being flexible. Everybody's got more than one thing that they're trying to do, and so the nice part about being in Division I is that you're totally immersed in basketball all the time, and so you get to you get to challenge yourself and look at things differently and see what other people are doing, and it's a 24 hours a day, 7-day-a-week job, and but you're totally immersed in basketball. So now when you get back in Division III, having had that experience, I think is great, but it's more of that the kids have other things that they're trying to do, as do the coaches have other responsibilities. So it's that part is significantly different.
Obviously, this team's got a lot of its core back. It lost its leading scorer in Abby Luger, but obviously she was at 12.7 points. But Jessica Lilquist is at 12.2. She comes back along with Bridget Bednar, also Jenna Orth, and a lot of the core group. A lot this team has gone through, obviously, especially emotionally. What can this team accomplish, though, this season? How easy or how hard will it be to build off of last year's, in their terms, great success?
Well, I think the biggest hurdle is they really want to do it, and I think so. That's not really that hurdle has come down quickly. It's something they want to do. They want to be successful. They want to build on last year. I mean, we have really 5 seniors that have been with the program for all 4 years, that are the ones who have taken up the torch and say, let's get this done. And like I said, some of them are just joining us now, so it's a work in progress. But I like the group that's returning, the new players. We have a couple of transfers which are going to be immediate impact, and a fine recruiting class that has come in that will help us as well. Josh Hirsch, who's was the assistant for Bill, is still the assistant here, has done an unbelievable job of keeping things together while all this transition was going on. So I think because of that, I think we'll be able to be a group, I think, that wants to be better than they were a year ago. So that's the goal.
Talking here with Ted Riverso, now head coach at Augsburg. Of course, you come back to a conference you somewhat know. It has changed, certainly, since you were in it last in '99. But St. Thomas continues to be on top, along with Bethel. It is a actual fascinating conference in terms of where it has gone in the last few years and where it may go in the next few. Certainly, postseason aspirations are, to say the least. Even St. Mary's was in the mix last year. Gustavus Adolphus at 17-9. Again, Augsburg right there in the middle with another group of good teams. Do you feel like you're at a disadvantage, though, having been out of the conference for so long, getting back into it? Or almost is that an advantage? You don't have any predetermined mentality of what to expect from teams.
Dave, it's really both. I think that coming in with fresh eyes and seeing things from a fresh perspective certainly has its advantages. But it's not like I'm not familiar with the people in the conference. I mean, 3 of the coaches I coached, in the conference. So yeah. I know the people. I know the I know the league. I know the schools. And so that that part of it is certainly an advantage. But the league, has been, pretty much, St. Thomas has been the premier school in the league for the last few years, and now being challenged by some other people, coming to the top. But until somebody knocks them off, the rest of the league is very, very competitive with an eye on St. Thomas. And but once you get past that top one, look at all the schools you mentioned. I mean, and every one of those, is a competitive program. And you throw in, St. Ben's and now I think Carleton and St. Olaf are going to both be improved. So it's right on down the line. I think it's a lot more balanced. I think we still have the top teams, but the rest of the league is much more balanced than probably when I left.
I realize it's a bit of a put you on a spot thing, but I know it wasn't necessarily part of the plan. How long do you think you give Augsburg? Have you told them, yes, I can give you X amount of time, or is this one of those where, hey, let's go see what this is like and see how long we can take it?
Well, I told them that I would like to stay here as long as they want me.
Great.
So, I don't have any plans to do anything other than coach Augsburg, and I am thrilled to be here. It has been a very, very good fit for me, and I am eager to get this thing going. So that's kind of where we left it.
I got to ask you this though: you're from the Westchester, Pennsylvania area.
Oh, here we go.
Well, here's my question: what's with coaches coming from that area and going to the Upper Midwest to have some success? You're from Westchester, and you make your way there. You certainly did well at St. Thomas. You had some time at the Minnesota women's team as an assistant coach. Now you're here. Bo Ryan at Wisconsin comes through Chester, Pennsylvania, and has certainly been successful. There's other coaches. We can go through a list here.
Right, and Bo, actually, Bo's high school team and my high school team played each other. So,
doesn't surprise me the slightest.
So Bo and I have exchanged that comment briefly because something happened. But Ori Emma, Gino was at Westchester at the time that I was, and Joe Sensor, who went on to have great success with the Vikings and still lives in Minnesota, was at Westchester at that time. So.
Gino's the only one who didn't go to the Upper Midwest.
No. He was not allowed to leave the area, so he was. he probably had to stay close to home. But there were like Linda Hill McDonald came out of Westchester and had a great career coaching, and you could go down the line of a number of people that were. But like Gino, I think Gino is the one that said, everybody in Philly can coach.
Yeah, that's true.
You go to any game and everybody's a coach.
Everyone's got an opinion. You're right.
Yeah. So
you wonder why the Eagles aren't succeeding. They have so many coaches to listen to.
They got a lot. They
really do.
My brother being one of them. So it's.
Well, I get a kick out of the fact that there's that many coaches and have been that successful. I mean, Bo Ryan, everyone talks about D1, very successful at Division III. As you know, before he went on to D1, obviously.
He was a great Division III coach, and our men's program at St. Thomas, when I was there,
Yep.
played against his Platteville teams when he was in Division III, and you know how impressive they were even then. So,
to put you on a bit of a spot, what is hopefully the legacy that Bill McHugh put in place that this Augsburg program can now not live up to? I don't like saying that, but you know what I'm trying to say is, what's the direction now?
I think he'll be recognized as the person or the coach that turned this thing around. That he was the one that started the upswing for Augsburg, and I think it's kind of our responsibility to keep it going now. And if we do, then I think he will get just credit for getting this thing going in the right direction. So, and that being, you know, I'd like to see him as a perennial conference tournament participant and an occasional challenger for the title and the national tournament. So that's the, you know, I think he had those same goals, and you know, it takes time to build, and I think he got it started, and unfortunately, it's now our responsibility to keep it going.
Well, it certainly was a great start to the process. Great to see you back in Division III.
Well, thanks, Dave.
And
it's
especially,
great to be back.
especially to see you take over a program that's certainly heading in the right direction, but with certainly a lot of emotions to deal with. We know that will be handled. And again, got the first win under your belt versus St. Scholastica, 63-61 or 63-62. Of course, you'll take on Northwestern. Quickly before I let you go, any idea what you're facing when you look at this? You didn't put this schedule together.
No, that was Josh as well.
Yeah.
So, like I said, he had his hands in everything. But Northwestern will be a challenge. You know, their men were very good in last year, and they play a similar style, great motion and terrific offensive players, and a little bit of a matchup zone on the other end. So something different that you have to deal with. So
you're going to have a mixture of teams in there, and you get the trip to Colorado Springs to boot. Coming up on Thanksgiving weekend. Well, Coach, thanks so much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. Good luck this season to you and the team. We'll certainly be keeping an eye on you. Maybe we'll even chat with you later in the season, depending on how things go. A tradition here on the show is we always give the guests the final word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with those who may be tuning in?
Well, I think it's going to be an exciting year of basketball. I think with the new rule changes and everybody making adjustments, I think it's going to put some wrinkles in what people think are traditional picks. So I would stay tuned. I think it's going to be a great year.
Yeah, it should be as well. Thanks so much. We'll look forward to talking to you. And as I said, good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Dave.
Dad Riverso joining us here on the show. We want to wish them, as we said, good luck coming up ahead. Should be fun to watch. We have plenty more show ahead. Plenty to talk about. We'll go around the regions. We got a couple other coaches on down in Texas. We got a coach lined up. We got some others lined up elsewhere. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com, National Association of Basketball Coaches. Stay tuned for more Hoopsville right after this.
I know sports is important, but having the academic part along with it is a big plus.
I've discovered in myself, a newfound ability to overcome adversity at all different angles.
At a Division III school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual. The end result in my mind is you just become a very well-rounded person.
Before I came into college, I didn't really think I'd be able to balance so much. It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
With a D3 school, there's a lot of time for other opportunities. The coaches expect a lot of you during soccer, but after soccer, that's your own personal time to really find out who you are and other opportunities that you can pursue.
By balancing all of my interests, basketball, my leadership skills, and academics, I'm able to better prioritize my life and to manage it.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor's Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
Division III allows you to be able to give yourself to other things. Not even just participate in them, but really get involved with them if you want to.
There's a lot of interaction. It's not just sitting back, taking notes. You're actually doing hands-on things and better preparing yourself for your major.
Choosing a Division III school, I've had the opportunity to develop my leadership skills and to be more involved on campus.
Division III in athletics, affords students the opportunity not only to participate in intercollegiate athletics at a competitive level, but also gives them the opportunity to, engage in the other interests in their campus and in their lives outside of that sport and outside of the academics on the campus.
And to have opportunity to have time to join clubs and being able to play basketball, it allows you to just be able to do everything you want to do. I wouldn't change it for the world.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor's Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor's Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
I know sports is important, but having the academic part along with it is a big plus.
I've discovered in myself, a newfound ability to overcome adversity at all different angles.
At a Division III school is really shaped around you developing yourself as a complete individual. The end result in my mind is you just become a very well-rounded person.
Before I came into college, I didn't really think I'd be able to balance so much. It helps a lot that you have a family with your team that can guide you.
With a D3 school, there's a lot of time for other opportunities. The coaches expect a lot of you during soccer, but after soccer, that's your own personal time to really find out who you are and other opportunities that you can pursue.
By balancing all of my interests, basketball, my leadership skills, and academics, I'm able to better prioritize my life and to manage it.
I know sports.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're having a good evening. It's our first Sunday show of the season, something we don't normally say until January. But again, adding Sunday shows to the season, want to give a little bit more love to Division III basketball. We realized we could step on some football toes, but decided we really needed to give more attention to basketball, so that's why we're on the air. You can join us on Twitter at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. All that information sitting at the bottom of your screen. Scrolling at the bottom of your screen for you, in case you missed it. I want to thank our coaches so far. We have a few more coaches. UT Tyler, women's coach, will join us. We'll also talk to Ryan Whitnable about the Great Lakes region coming up here shortly. But let's get to our Atlantic region. And the Atlantic region is one of those regions, especially in men's basketball, lots of questions, almost seemingly every year. We talked earlier about William Patterson's big win over Mount Union to start the season. I voted for William Patterson in the top 25. They didn't get into the top 25. Obviously got votes. Mount Union was number 7. Is that because William Patterson is better than voters thought they were? Is it because Mount Union isn't as good as number 7? Is it a combination of both? Is it absolutely none of that? And it was just the fact it was the first game of the season. Who knows? But the one thing about the Atlantic region we always run into is, especially in the last few years, is how good is the NJAC? Is it coming back to the power it used to be? On top of that, the CUNYAC, the Skyline, and all these other conferences, now the MAC Freedom, can they get a foothold and become better? Honestly, the Atlantic tends to be near the bottom along with the East region, as in the sense of power regions. But there's some good basketball teams there, and there's teams that are lurking, that are they're quietly there. And one of those teams, I think this year, is the one we're going to talk to, and that's Brooklyn. The Bulldogs off to a terrific start this season with some big wins. And we're certainly would love to see them improve upon that, and I'm sure their head coach would love to see them improve upon what they've already been able to accomplish so far this season. So joining us on the Hoopsville hotline is their head coach, Rich Micallef. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville, sir.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening to you.
Well, good evening to you yourself as well. And hey, listen, I looked at your schedule at the beginning of the season, and a couple things caught my mind. First, you don't seem like you're shying away from anybody this year. Second of all, you had some nice little kind of different matchups in there than we've seen in the past. You were heading out to Case Western Reserve in Ohio to get some good games in. I noticed that they're going to have a game against Albertus Magnus at one point this season. You've got William Patterson on the schedule. There was another tournament I thought I saw, but maybe I was just imagining things. But it was just a matter of seeing you guys in a couple of different places this season that I'm not used to seeing you. Has the mentality maybe changed, or do you feel you've got a team that you want to put in position come March?
Well, we're trying to schedule teams that we feel that can upper our schedule as far as not only just us but the conference.
Sure.
And we want to build our strength of schedule because I know that was one of the things that deferred us from last year in getting to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
And putting Albertus Magnus on the schedule and teams like Case Western. And, we've played William Patterson in the past, and they're a strong team, again, in the NJAC. So we wanted to build up our strength of schedule in that regard.
Of course, you played Rochester Tech to start the season and start the tournament at Case Western Reserve. Not like that Rochester Tech has been great since back in 2009, but at least a solid team. They're actually 16-9 record a couple years ago. I shouldn't speak too quickly. Got a big win over Case Western Reserve. That taps into the UAA. You've got games against New Jersey City and William Patterson coming up. You got SUNY Old Westbury in there. Stevens taps into a nice conference for you guys. You mentioned the Albertus Magnus. You've got a nice little schedule there for, I know what the challenges that you guys sometimes face in scheduling, and it kind of helps position the CUNYAC. But you touch on saying that making the CUNYAC maybe better. Is this something we're seeing across the board in the CUNYAC?
Well, I think so. And I think the CUNYAC is not getting the recognition they deserve. The CUNYAC conference, I believe this year especially, is much more balanced than we get credit for.
Sure.
With Baruch and Staten Island, I mean, we're picked third in the CUNYAC conference. We feel, York is going to be strong, and John Jay is so much better than they were last year. I think across the board, the CUNYAC conference is going to be stronger than what people give it credit for.
Well, Baruch, for example, last season was 21-7, made the NCAA tournament, and got a win. And then Baruch made some headlines in their preseason. Who did they play? It was blanking on it. D1 team they took down to the wire.
Seton Hall.
Seton
Yeah,
Hall,
sure.
thank you. You know, that certainly got some attention. And they've got a nice little schedule, though a loss to Montclair State. To be honest with you, Montclair State might be sneaky good this year, but they've got a decent out-of-conference schedule this year. Lehman last year, 18-10 after a hot start, certainly turned some heads early on, and they've got some good squads that they'll also play William Patterson this season. It's definitely a change.
And don't forget, Lehman beat William Patterson last
year.
And they're a very good team also, which I forgot to mention, in the prelude there. Lehman's going to be very good. I mean, we're pretty balanced across the board at the CUNYAC conference.
Well, and you mentioned Staten Island. They had a terrific season last year, 29. They were terrific the year before at 28-3, but got left out. And that's definitely what I'm sensing. I've talked to other coaches there. You guys seem to go, okay, we're changing this.
Yeah, and look at Staten Island. What they did, they beat NYU in the ECAC final last year. They've got everybody returning. So, I mean, and they're one of the favorites to win the CUNYAC. I think we're a strong conference last year, and I hope we get the recognition that we deserve. As far as the conference is concerned, not just only as as Brooklyn College is concerned.
Right. Of course, you've got a region that's got the NJAC, which has also kind of hit a rough spot for a few years, but seems to be coming back. We talked about William Patterson. We got Stockton, et cetera. The MAC Freedom is at least competitive. It seems like the Atlantic is going from, what, was it 2 years ago? We talked about Staten Island got left home. Nobody from the Atlantic got in that large bid. Look at schedules at the beginning of the season. Certainly this Atlantic region is setting themselves up to be deeper and maybe get some bids this year.
Yeah, we're hoping so, and that's why we took Albertus Magnus on. We're going out there in sometime in December, and we got William Patterson next Saturday, and we're trying to beef the schedule up, so to speak, so that that maybe we can get some consideration. God forbid, that we're not in the CUNYAC conference finals again as this last year.
Yeah, correct me if I'm not. This is your second season as head coach of the Bulldogs. Last year, their first 21 season since 2010. Certainly trying to turn the program around. I remember the days of 08, 09, and 010 when this was a pretty strong 10-win season or 20-win team, and then it kind of hit the slides, and now you kind of seem to have it back. But it's because you got some good talent there that maybe people aren't realizing. You brought back a good core from last year's squad.
Yeah, we're an upperclassman, driven team this year. We've got a lot of seniors returning. We've added some seniors that might not have been on the team last year, but they're part of it now. And maybe that's why we've done a little well in the last two games. But we're looking forward to a push down the end of the season. So we're trying to build that appropriately.
You look at last year's stats and this year's roster, the top two scorers coming back. And by the way, it's not like you guys don't score points. I'm going to screw up his name. I apologize now. Was it Jumbalage? Jumbalage. That's right. It's like Jumbalage. Yes, Jumbalai, but Jumbalage. Jumbalage comes back. He was averaging 18-plus points a game. Lorenzo Williams at 15.5 points a game returns. Is Jai Kellerman? He's not back.
Jai Kellerman graduated last year.
Right. You lost Kellerman, so you lose 14.5 points there, but you got two guys behind him that had double figures. You do have talent coming back. So what's the mentality of the team this year? You've got offense. Do you have to focus on defense? Do you have to ratchet up maybe in offense? What's the adjustment you have to make going into this season?
Well, we lost 40 points coming into the season with our center Valan Jambalik and Jai and Steven Diaz. So we lost 40 points in our lineup. But yeah, we're focusing more on defense and see if we can make better adjustments there, where we can be more competitive on the defensive end, and as well as we try to outscore teams, but we want to be able to make stops. And that's important coming down to the end of the season when it comes to playoff time.
This conference will obviously keep you guys a little bit focused. I think it's kind of like the NJAC in some cases where, you've got some good teams at the top, but those middle teams are easily or games that the middle teams can easily win can come at the top. And at the same time, the bottom can always come up and bite somebody, for lack of a better description. You've got to stay focused for all 25 games this season. But how hard is that to do when you have to take breaks like from December 11th to January 3rd? You'll play at Lehman on the 11th of December. Then you take a break and you'll play Staten Island on the 3rd of November.
That was a challenge last year. And, we want to stay healthy. We want to be able to compete with everybody. And, the non-conference schedule we feel is as strong as we've had in quite a long time. And that's what we set up this year because we were, we are a more senior-led team this year that we feel that we can do that. But when it comes to conference time, we want to be able to continually get better as the season goes on, and hopefully, we'll be peaking towards playoff time.
What's the secret about the CUNYAC? Why is it? I think some people don't appreciate maybe the style of play in the conference. Obviously, very city, centric, in the sense that that's where all the schools are from. Obviously, the big news was a couple of years ago when the game was on ESPN3. Everyone thought Staten Island would win, and York of New York surprised everybody and even took the extra, took Staten Island's bid away, essentially. But what's the style of play in this conference? Is it, the more street or city and street centric, or is it not giving it enough credit to maybe more of a traditional style? I tend to watch some of these teams and see a little bit more half court than a lot of people maybe give it credit for.
From our standpoint, we're not going to be the traditional style of basketball. We're going to try to do things where we're a little more, off the cuff and a little more, when you look at like a Kentucky style of basketball with the dribble drive, and we're going to try to attack you and things like that, where we're not just going to be the dribble handoff kind of pick and roll, as they call the way the right style of basketball. I'm not sure that's the way we want to look at ourselves as, but we're gonna be more, we're gonna try to attack and be more aggressive on that style, on that end of the basketball court than most traditional teams. And whether that's a CUNYAC style, I'm not sure, but I think that's where we're headed, as far as this year is concerned.
And you know this school well. We talked about it, I think, last year. All-time leading scorer when you graduated with 1,740 career points from Brooklyn. What's it like now that you've gotten a year under your belt of being, coaching your alma mater and now trying to strive to take them back to the NCAA tournament again?
Well, I don't think there's any secret there. Now that the guys know what's expected of them, I think we're a little ahead of the game, as far as this year. But it comes down to the latter part of the season where we need to get better and improve, not only just on the offensive end, but on the defensive end. And I think that's where we lacked last year, and we are taking an emphasis on being better at the defensive end and making more stops and not just trying to outscore people. And I think that's been the stigma of the CUNYAC conference, where the offensive end was more important. This year, we're trying to take a more prudent approach of making more stops, down the road.
You certainly got two big wins to start the season. You beat RIT, who can be a really good program on almost any year. You beat them soundly, 91-68. You beat a Case Western Reserve team that may not be at the top of the UAA, but is certainly competitive in that conference. They've been 6-8 the last 2 years in the UAA, and you beat them 92-79. Those are two big wins. How do you get them refocused now at home against New Jersey City, who's, I would say, you never know what you're going to get, and William Patterson, who we know is clearly probably better than people realize?
Yeah, I think William Patterson is underestimated, throughout the NJAC. I mean, I think they're going to be really strong when all is said and done. I mean, they're a very good team, and they gave us all they can handle last year, all that we can handle last year, rather. and they're coming into our place. I mean, they've got it. In my estimation, I think they're in the top 20 at some point coming into us. They're playing real good basketball. They've got a lot of guys returning. Jose Rabinvis does a great job with that program. I think they're underestimated. I think they should be up there. So we've got a tough schedule ahead of us before we get into the CUNY Conference. Those games coming ahead of us. So, look, any way you slice it, we've got to take care of business this week, and hopefully we can be competitive, and then start our CUNY run. And we've got Albertus Magnus sometime in December, and a couple others like Old Westbury. They're going to be tough. Look, we've got a tough schedule, so we're looking forward to it, and I think our guys are focused, and hopefully we're ready to go.
Well, I certainly love what I've seen so far. I love your schedule. I really do. And sorry, the bad news is William Patterson will not be in the top 20 by the time you play them, only because there's no top 25 poll until after you play them. So we allow the voters to at least get a few extra games in there before they have to vote in the first week. But you're right. I think they're underappreciated. They're in my top 25 ballot, for example. But looking forward to it, Coach. Really great start to the season for you guys. I'm looking forward to seeing what the CUNYAC is like this season. As always, we give the coach, though, the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
Well, we're going to just try the best we can. We know we got a tough schedule ahead of us, and look, it's a long season. It's a long way to go. You never know what's going to happen injury-wise and things like that. But we're just going to try to continue to play Brooklyn basketball. We hope the people that watch us and follow us enjoy what we're doing, and we're going to give them the best product that we can. And I look at the CUNYAC conference. I think we're one of the we're a strong conference, regardless of what happens, throughout the season. Baruch, Staten Island, York, Lehman, all the way down the line. I think there's going to be better parity throughout, and I hope we get the recognition that we deserve throughout the conference.
It certainly looks that way this year, Coach. Congratulations again on the start. Thank you for joining me. I certainly appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing how the rest of the campaign transpires.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to talking to you in the near future.
Definitely. Take care, Coach.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Rich Micallef joining us from Brooklyn. He's, listen, on paper, I'm just looking at things in that CUNYAC, and I think he's on to something there. I think the CUNYAC is going to surprise some people this season. You've seen it in the change and how they're scheduling, and there's a great example at Brooklyn. They'll take on New Jersey City and William Patterson. They'll get into conference play against CCNY, then SUNY Old Westbury. That's all before the end of November. They then have Stevens, John Jay in conference, Medgar Evers in conference, Albertus Magnus out of conference, Lehman in conference. That's all in December in the first 11 days. They got some good games on this schedule before they get into conference play. Watch out for the CUNYAC this year. I think we're going to be talking about the CUNYAC a little bit more than we have in the past. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll switch gears, talk women's basketball. We'll jump down to Texas. New head coach down there as well. Coach Hassell will join us from UT Tyler. Of course, the team ranked 21st in the country, brings back a lot of talent, but with a new coach who certainly knows the area well. We'll talk to her about what she expects from the season and what she's expecting from the conference, and certainly what can this squad do this year after bowing out in the second round last season. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com, the National Association of Basketball Coaches. You can interact with us on Twitter at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com, or join us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Hoopsville. When we come back, Coach Hassell joins us to talk basketball in the ASC. We'll be back with more Hoopsville right after this.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com.
Division III schools offer academic scholarships instead of athletic scholarships. This really puts the focus that the student athlete needs to maintain that GPA.
I did receive a non-athletic scholarship upon entering school.
I got the presidential scholarship, which was huge for me.
I think there's more opportunities for academic scholarships in Division III. A lot of people pick schools just based on the sport and don't get that experience.
Being a Division III athlete and developing my leadership skills has definitely put my name out there and helped me get more recognition on campus, but more recognition nationwide. I did win the Jostens Trophy, which is based on leadership, academics, and then how well you do on the court.
I'm also the Schwartz Scholar of my class. Schwartz Scholarship is basically a scholarship that is given to a student who's identified as a likely leader.
At the end of the day, it won't matter how they play on the field, it will matter how they do in the classroom.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Forgive me as I am tweeting at the same time as producing and anchoring the show, because this is what we do on Hoopsville. We do it all right here out of our Hoopsville studios out of the greater Baltimore area. Just a teaser. I'm hearing, well, by the way, we're working on a new partnership. I don't want to give too much away, but let's just say a group that we've been hoping to be involved with Hoopsville for the last 10 years looks like to be involved with our show. We're looking forward to it. Look for that announcement in the, I would love to say coming days, but maybe before Thanksgiving. Also, one of the groups we've been working with on Hoopsville for a number of years. Apparently, good news coming around the corner. It's what I've been told. So look for some good news from them as well and other things down the road as we speak. Also, we will be hitting the road with Hoopsville, hoping to we're thinking about maybe going to the Wendy's Classic beginning of December. I should say I'm going to be there. It's not like we're going to bring Hoopsville on the road. I'll probably be home in time to do the show on that Sunday evening. But nonetheless, we'll be on the road. Also, probably going to be traveling again in January surrounding the NCAA convention, maybe heading down to Texas. If we can get our budget in order and make that work out, we may be down in Texas to see some basketball games. And who knows, elsewhere and anywhere else. We're just looking at the schedule, see what we can do. So look out for us down the road. Look out for some announcements. Speaking of Texas, certainly some good basketball taking place down there. One of the stories we certainly watched was on the women's side of things last year. Of course, in the second round, well, as is Texas, and because you can't really get teams away from each other due to the 500-mile rule, we unfortunately saw Texas Tyler and Texas Dallas face off in the second round. Of course, that brought Texas Tyler's season to the end under then-coach Kevin Baker. Team finished 27-3 after a 19-1 campaign in the ASC. Well, things have changed, as it were. New head coach, but I think the same ambitions. They are ranked 21st in the preseason poll, and under new guideship, which we've seen a little bit of, and it's been a bit of a theme of the Hoopsills early on, talking to some new coaches, especially on the women's side. So we wanted to figure out, what can Texas Tyler do this year? What can they do under a new head coach who certainly knows the region and knows the conference and knows everything else pretty well? So joining us on the Hoopsville hotline, Kenrda Hassell from Texas Tyler. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
First and foremost, welcome back to Division III. If I'm, I may have said that before I jumped. Correct? You were an assistant coach somewhere else.
Yes, Abilene Christian.
Abilene Christian. Thank you. I see. Sometimes it comes in my head correctly, and sometimes I remember it. But you're not. It's not like you're not familiar here. You're a bit of a pretty good basketball player in your day at Hardin-Simmons, and All-American and all. What's it like to now take over a D3 program? I say kind of in an area. I understand Texas is massive, but kind of in an area you're familiar.
Well, it's been a really exciting time for me to be able to come back into the ASC. Now, when I played, however, UC Tyler didn't even have a program. So they started the year after I finished up, so I never played in their gym or had any experiences at UC Tyler, so that's a little bit different. But I'm really excited to be back in this league.
I was going to say how much has changed, but we haven't gotten that far into the season, so I'm not going to jump off that bridge. And we'll talk about the changes in the rules in a little bit. But first and foremost, let's point out, you haven't even gotten the season underway yet. You got hired in May after Kevin Baker left. Your first games are coming up this weekend. How much control did you have on the schedule, and did you have any ability to get a game in this weekend, or was this kind of just out the window?
The schedule was pretty much set when I was hired. Now, we did have an exhibition game against Stephen F. Austin, but as far as a real game, it was pretty much out the window already.
By the way, put up a ton of three-pointers in that Stephen F. Austin game, as I saw. By design or by defense?
No, by design, actually. Yep. And there were several that rolled in and out that I thought we were going to have and really could have made a difference in that game a little bit.
Is that going to be the change? Is that going to be a bit of a change in the mentality? I mean, I'm not going to say I know Texas Tyler's mentality last year all that much, but I remember watching quite a bit of the Dallas game. It was on a rare Sunday due to storms that had pushed the games, and I don't remember being a very shoot from the outside mentality. It seemed like more of a pounded inside mentality. Maybe I've got it wrong, but is your mentality to try and spread it a little bit to the outside more?
Well, our personnel is completely different this year. We graduated 3 really good players and have replaced them with some really good shooters. And so I am a post player by heart and always will be. And so I'm not ever going to say we're not pounding inside. But you know what happens when you have a balanced offense is you go inside and then outside's wide open. So we're going to do a little bit of both, but we do work on the three-point shot quite a bit.
Well, one of your leading scorers is back from last season in Michelle Obach. 10.6 points a game. Obviously, she's one of your threats from outside. What else can we? I mean, you do. Here's what I'm trying to figure out. I don't vote on the women's top 25, but you get a 21 ranking. You've got 3 important players that left. You do have a lot back in a coaching change. What do you think voters are seeing in your squad that they're buying into already?
Well, we do have a good nucleus returning, and what people, I think, hopefully see is that once teams experience success, they know what it takes after that. And to go 27-4 the year before, and then 27-3 last year, you kind of realize that whoever returns, they know what it takes, and they're extremely hungry. We've added a good group of transfers into our mix, and returned another good shooter, Mackenzie May, off of last year's squad. That she didn't start, but she still averaged about 10 points.
Yeah.
And so she, is looking to help us contribute as well.
Yeah, May, a little over 10 points. You obviously lost the inside, as you pointed out, but again, a lot of good shooters coming back. You look at this schedule, and you've got Southwestern coming up and Schreiner in 2 games on the 20th and 21st, both of them on the road. Then you've got a game against little-known Rust, and that's just because it's an inside Division III joke. Nobody really knows anything about Rust. Before then getting into conference play with Howard Payne and Sol Ross at the beginning of December. You got a game against McMurray, and then you'll get back into it with Hardin Simmons and Letourneau. You do have another game with Austin in Texas, Lutheran, and Trinity, Texas even. Out of conference before you get back into conference play. The one trick about conference is there's a lot of games, but the ASC is constantly changing how many conference games there are to play this year. I know you're new to it all, but still for the rest of it, it's like we don't remember how many games you have to play in conference. Was that something you, obviously most of the schedule is taken care of, but is that one of those things you hear the other coaches going, how many games am I scheduling this year? I don't remember.
Absolutely. It's changed, and we had conference meetings, and they're already talking about how we can change it back. So you never know. There's
always somebody who doesn't like the scheduling in the ASC.
Right. Well, you get stuck on a side playing, certain teams that are a little bit harder than others, and everybody wants to play everybody twice, so it only makes sense.
Well, of course, which also would leave you with absolutely nobody to schedule outside of conference. Is there ever any concern? And I realize you're new to this, and the coaches' conversations are probably a little bit new to it too, but is there ever a concern in that conference that, listen, we play that double round robin, we are shooting ourselves in the foot at getting extra teams into the NCAA tournament?
Mm-hmm. Right. And that was where the conversation went when we started discussing changing the scheduling again. Absolutely.
So clearly, at least it's part of the conversation, and that's good to hear. Obviously, Belhaven, by the way, Belhaven and McMurray, we should mention, are the 2 that are going to be coming back into the ASC. You're just not technically conference games as of yet. So what are your expectations when you got this job? Knowing the history that was in place, again, you pointed out 27-4 the season before that, 27-3 last year, 18-9 back in 2013. This is a program that clearly bounced back under Coach Baker. So what were your expectations when you got the job, or even what were your expectations when you applied for the job?
Right. Well, I applied because I knew that they were so good and they had experienced so much success, and I feel like UT Tyler is a little bit of a gold mine just with location, facilities, ability to recruit. And so my goal ever since I've been a player has always been to win a national championship, and that will always be the goal. Now, I'm not saying we're there this year or anything like that. We're focusing more on the daily process, improving every single day that we step on the floor. And, we've had a scrimmage and an exhibition, and we've made some small steps, but we're going to take this one game at a time.
Is the 21 ranking something that you worry might go to the team's head in any way, shape, or form?
I don't worry about those things because on a daily basis we talk about the things that really matter. And like I was saying, it's about improving. It's about doing the little things right day in and day out. And they've bought into that. I'm extremely proud of how they have caught on to the new system and taken up the new philosophy. And no coaches do things exactly the same, and they've really bought in, and they're starting to say the things that I say in practice. And so you know that the message is being received.
You finished third all-time in rebounds when you left Hardin-Simmons. You were second all-time when you left at points, 1,759 points. 700 shots out of nearly 13 that you took. You certainly had a good shooting percentage. I think they've inducted you in the American Southwest Conference Hall of Honor. Have the coaches in the ASC at least honored your request that as a lofty player in this conference in its history that you at least get 10 points per game?
They should. Let's present that.
I thought, it's the least they could do to have someone of your
doubt.
stature to come back.
No doubt. Well, you know what? There are several coaches in the league that played in it as well.
Yes, that is true.
So really good.
And
even a national champion.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. What's that like? I mean, obviously you haven't gotten into conference play, but you've had conversations and you certainly know the area. Abilene Christian certainly keeps you in the mix as well. So what's it like to not only coach in a conference you know well, but to maybe be coaching against people you know well in any way, shape, and form?
Well, I'll let you know in about a month.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So it is funny because I do know two of them particularly well. They were my former teammates. And so one is now the coach at McMurray, and then, of course, the coach at Hardin-Simmons. I played with both of them. And so, it's fun to see them out on the road recruiting and then at the conference meetings. And we're still teammates in some form, and we're glad to help each other. But when the tip-off happens, it'll be extremely competitive.
I was going to say, you're probably teammates until, A, you're going after the same recruit, which is probably happening more times than we can count, and B, when the whistle finally blows to start a game. That's probably when it ends, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
What have you learned outside of Division III, being in Division I as an assistant? What have you learned there that you can combine with your playing skills to kind of meld together into a D3 coach experience?
Right, that's a great question. I feel like my experiences over the last 10 years have really helped me and prepared me to be a head coach and think a little bit outside the box. I call our compliance coordinator often and say, can we do this? And he's like, well, no one's ever thought of that. And it doesn't mean you can't, but the thing is, that's what we were doing at D1 is we were trying to think outside the box and figure out things that we could do to separate us from other people. And so that's kind of the philosophy I've taken into this. And as much of that stuff that we can afford to do, we're continuing to do as far as recruiting goes and then on the court stuff as well. But just figuring out how to push your players to be their best and then developing the best team that you can. And so I absolutely value my time at Division I and even Division II.
I was going to say, the other thing that's interesting is, okay, you've played in Division III. You understand what it's like to be a student athlete in Division III, and not that long ago. You then go on to Division II and Division I and get an idea about what it's like to coach in those ranks with a very different player set, especially at Division I. The expectations with scholarships, et cetera, are a bit different. So you obviously can relate to the student athlete, having been a student athlete, but you're bringing to the table a little bit of a different mentality when it comes to coaching. Have you even had that inner battle with yourself?
You know what I've been so happy with since I've gotten here is just the love that I've seen for the game again. And, not every Division I athlete is the same or anything like that, but they're there and it's a job, and it really is. It's so all day long, every day of the week, all summer long nowadays. But these girls here, they're here because they want to be and they love it. And I can't keep them out of the gym, and that is an amazing problem to have.
It's an amazing difference, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you're right. It is a job technically in Division I, even if they love the game. In Division III, they want to be there because they choose to be there. They don't have to be there.
That's right.
And that is a big difference. Let's get to the rules, though, because unfortunately everyone's got to play with these. And there's some massive changes this year. I know you haven't played a game in real yet. You played the exhibition so far. How much are you adjusting as a coach, and how much are your players adjusting? Or is this no big deal on most of the adjustments? It's just different way of calling timeout.
It is just a little bit different. We set up situations in practice every week, a couple times a week, just to make sure that we're getting comfortable with that before we're in a game. And so I haven't really noticed a huge difference. We still have media timeouts at the 5-minute mark, and so that stops play.
Okay.
But yeah, it does just change the timeouts a little bit. But overall, to me, it hasn't been that much different.
So you're still playing with the timeout. You're still playing with the media timeouts.
Yeah.
So obviously from Division I, that's the exact same. So you're playing with 3 30s and 1 full, and you've got to use a 30 in the first half, leaving you with 3 timeouts in the second half, correct?
That's right.
Okay. And then, so the only real big difference that you guys, obviously, by the way, I love the new timeout structure in that sense. But the only other question I got is, what about the last minute of a game scenario? How much?
Right. I think that's really exciting, honestly, if you're in a close game to be able to use that. I mean, the WNBA is doing it, NBA has done it forever, and so just to kind of catch up with them and have the opportunity to do that. I will say in our first scrimmage, the officials were bothered a little bit more by that than we were. They were wanting us to try to call a timeout in that last minute so they could get used to it, which I thought was funny. But like I said, I mean, we practice that all the time right now, and just making sure that our kids don't take the dribble to advance the ball before we can call the timeout, because then it would already have been advanced. But it does make it a little bit more exciting, and maybe you can win on a last-second shot that way.
Well, the other thing that's interesting, too, though, is you have to then hold on to some timeouts. This is going to change how you call timeouts.
Yeah, absolutely. You need that one for sure.
Yeah, you almost have to think twice in the backcourt scenarios, not to waste one. Well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on the show. Really looking forward to seeing what you guys can do there at Tyler. Certainly the Patriots, I think, would love to not run into Dallas again like they did last year, but that is the way things are. But in the meantime, obviously, big game coming up to start the season against Southwestern, who certainly was improved last year as well, et cetera, et cetera. As always here on this show, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
Yeah, I just wanted to first start off by thanking you for including us on your show. It's an honor to be included. And then I wanted to say that as coaches, it's our job to push our players to, succeed. And sometimes we push a little bit too hard and can be critical just to try to get our point across. And I feel like with my team so far, I've been teaching a new system, and so I've been very detail-oriented. But I just want to sing their praises right now because they have been extremely coachable, and they picked up the system. They're working really, really hard, and I really can't ask for more. So I'm just really excited about going on this journey with them.
Very good. Well, Coach, congratulations. Like I said, certainly looking forward to seeing where the team can go this season. Welcome back to Division III. Certainly glad to see you back, and looking forward to seeing what you guys do this campaign.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Kenrda Hassell joining us from Texas Tyler. Again, the team was 27-3 last year, losing in the second round to Texas Dallas, their ASC counterpart. They will start the season. They have not started yet, if you missed that. They start the season on the 20th against Southwestern, then a game against Schreiner on the 21st to get their campaign underway. When we come back, we'll talk Great Lakes basketball with this is the Week in Great Lakes Basketball podcast. Ryan Whitnable will join us to talk about the men's side of things there. You listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com, the National Association of Basketball Coaches. More Hoopsville right after this.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Division III schools offer academic scholarships instead of athletic scholarships. This really puts the focus that the student athlete needs to maintain that GPA.
I did receive a non-athletic scholarship upon entering school.
I got the presidential scholarship, which was huge for me.
I think there's more opportunities for academic scholarships in Division III. A lot of people pick schools just based on the sport and don't get that experience.
Being a Division III athlete and developing my leadership skills has definitely put my name out there and helped me get more recognition on campus, but more recognition nationwide. I did win the Jostens Trophy, which is based on leadership, academics, and then how well you do on the court.
I'm also the Schwartz Scholar of my class. Schwartz Scholarship is basically a scholarship that is given to a student who's identified as a likely leader.
At the end of the day, it won't matter how they play on the field, it will matter how they do in the classroom.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody, on this Sunday evening. Hope you are enjoying our first Sunday show of the season, something we don't normally say until January, but this year, as we have noted throughout the show, and so far throughout the season, our two shows, we have added the Sunday show to the season. Granted, we're fighting a little football today. No big deal. Also, announcements on the future shows coming up in the next block. Our final block, we'll talk about what shows will be on the air. For example, next Sunday, probably not going to be on the air after the Hoopsville Classic, but we'll talk about that in the next block. If you want to interact with us, social media is your good way of doing that. You can join us on Twitter at D3Hoopsville, hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at d3hoops.com, or join us on Facebook. Facebook.com/Hoopsville. Talk a lot about regions, and as we get further into the season here, we will get into our normal mode, as it were. We're on Sundays, we traditionally talk about the Northeast, the Atlantic, the South, and the Central, I believe, if memory serves. On Thursdays, we will tend to talk Great Lakes, East region, Mid-Atlantic, and West, with a little bit of South thrown in there because a lot of teams in the South tend to be traveling on Sundays, so we'll throw in a South team on a Thursday. Our School of the Week will reemerge on Thursdays. We'll have our Coaches Corner, etc. on Sundays. But right now, we're just kind of getting the season going and talking about different storylines in general. And so we're not necessarily in that order, and that's why it may not make sense to some longtime viewers. We're going to talk some Great Lakes now. And instead of bringing in a team, obviously we talked Thomas More women's basketball last show. We're going to talk specifically about the Great Lakes region from the men's point of view today, if that's okay with you guys. Just kind of helps us get off the ground, as it were. I think the Great Lakes region is going to be one of those that's certainly going to be interesting to watch this season. I think it's going to keep us a little bit on our toes. I think we're going to find some dark horses in there. And so we're going to have a few regional reporters coming out of the Great Lakes, just like the Northeast and some others. And joining us tonight is a gentleman I got the pleasure of joining on his show last week. It is Ryan Whitnable. He has his own podcast. He's a Great Lakes regional reporter for us, and we're going to talk men's basketball with Ryan. Ryan, welcome to Hoopsville, sir.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Glad you could join us. And I know I'm stealing the opportunity that you're taking the Sunday off after 6 straight weeks, so I'm taking advantage of the opportunity, as it were. First and foremost, we'll talk about your show in just a little bit, but season's off and underway, and we've already had our first maybe surprise in the sense that Mount Union played William Patterson. I said on your show I thought that was a good test for Mount Union, the Purple Raiders. Did not see William Patterson winning by 22, though.
No. Yeah, talking to Mount Union, I talked to Coach Uline a few weeks ago. I know they've got some injury problems up there in Alliance. Taking a quick peek at the box score, probably one of their better players coming back, Alan Jackson, did not play yesterday. But, it's one of those teams, Mount Union, I expect them maybe with their schedule to maybe struggle a little bit early, some injuries to get through. But Mount Union could be one of those dangerous teams that we're talking about into January and February as they start to put the wheels back on the bus and start driving towards the tournament.
Mount Union last year, as many remember, were 24-7. 15-3 in the OAC, again losing to taking on Potsdam State today. As you and I are talking, this is a pre-recorded segment for the show tonight. We don't know the outcome over Potsdam State, but we'll certainly update that by the end of the show. So Ryan, actually, just going to stay in the NCAC, or the OAC, I should say, the OAC as a result. But again, this is an OAC that's certainly probably on the top side, pretty darn strong. Mount Union is certainly favored to have a really good season with Coach Uline. Marietta loses some talent, but certainly brings back a whole wealth of talent from a 28-4 team that went pretty far in the NCAA tournament last year. John Carroll is always in the conversation. How do you see this conference breaking down? What are you hearing about the OAC this year?
Yeah, well, like we just talked about with Mount Union, I picked them number 1 in the conference. The coaches agreed. Again, we talked about the injuries. I think this is a team that may come on late rather than come out of the starting blocks really well. Something we disagreed about last week. I've got John Carroll number 2 in this conference. They played really well. We're neck and neck with Marietta and Mount Union last year. They only graduated 2 seniors. They bring back a great core. A little bit of a lackluster non-conference schedule for John Carroll this year, but I think they're going to be in the mix in the OAC all year long. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see Mike Moran and his Blue Streaks win the OAC this year. Talking about Marietta a little bit, I think Marietta lost the most of the top 3 in the OAC. Got the chance to watch them on Friday night. They took on Westminster. Just looking at the scoreline, Marietta won by 18 points, but they looked a little bit sloppy in my mind. The defense was a little bit off from a year ago. I know John Vanderwall wouldn't be happy about giving up 82 points to anyone. We'll get to know a lot about Marietta, though. They've got a tournament at home this upcoming weekend. If both teams can get through their Friday night games, we could see a big test for Marietta against a really good Catholic squad on Saturday night. Again, a good starting five for Marietta, but some young guys are going to have to step up off the bench if Marietta is going to repeat that Elite Eight performance from last year. And then, you look at the rest of the conference, there's a lot of parity in the OAC. Wilmington is my number 4 team to replace BW, who lost a lot of their talent, lost their coach as well. Capital, of course, the situation with Coach Goodwin down there stepping away this year to battle a very treatable form of cancer. I think Capital has a good young group coming in. Otterbein had a real tough year last year, but last night went blow for blow with OWU, Ohio Wesleyan, and looked really good doing it with their new coach. Should be an interesting year in the conference, but I think over the course of 16 conference games, it's going to be Marietta, Mount Union, and John Carroll in some order.
Yeah, you and I on your show, I said, John Carroll seems to always be in the conversation, but never lives up to the expectations. And I just don't know if John Carroll is going to live up to the expectations. I think Marietta finished second. And I said to you on your show, I thought Capital would be the surprise here. I think they rally around their coach despite him not being there. I think they've got some good talent. They did get a first-place vote in the coaches group in the OAC, and I was kind of told that wasn't just a throwaway vote. Someone seriously considered them number 1. I don't know if I go that far, but I think they're definitely the team to watch out for in the OAC. Of course, the other conference, there's a couple conferences in the Great Lakes that get attention, and the MIAA, certainly one of those big ones. Last year it was Calvin's to win. Hope was in the mix, rallying late. Late in the year they kind of came on after having a bit of a tough stretch. I think they lost 3 out of 4 on 2 separate occasions. Trine was in the mix, finished tied with Hope in second place, and of course you got the rest of the way there. Hope brings back everybody. They're certainly going to be dangerous, and Trine is no one to look over right now.
Agreed. This is a conference that I really split. If you look at last year, you really can split into 2 halves. All that fourth was 9-5 in the conference, and then you drop back to Adrian at 6-8, 3 games behind. I think it's going to be in that same order at the top half again. I think Hope, obviously, as you said, has to be the favorite here. They bring back everyone. Calvin, of course, graduated Great Lakes Player of the Year, Jordan Brink. A lot of new faces at Calvin. They recruit very well. I wouldn't expect them to fall too far. But again, Hope the favorite. Trine, as we said, was tied for second in the conference last year. They bring back a great core. They'll be looking to move up into that top slot as well. And then, of course, Alma finished 4th in the conference last year, 9-5. But 3 of those wins were against the top 3, Hope, Calvin, and Trine. Alma beat all 3 of them. So they'll be in the mix as well. And if there's one team in the bottom half that I think could move up into that top half of that conference, you have to look at Adrian. I believe they have several good transfers coming in this year. They're off to a 2-0 start. Not sure about the competition they've played, but Adrian's kind of a team that's kind of on the outside that I'm watching. Albion's always tough, and then you got Kalamazoo and Olivet lurking It's a great conference. Again, though, hopes to lose, and I think Greg Mitchell's got that squad ready for a big year.
Yeah, Greg Mitchell in his second year at Hope, and you're right. I think they're set for a good year. What I'm looking forward to, Hope, Calvin, men and women don't tend to play doubleheaders together. Just the way the conference is set up. Obviously, there's an extra school on the women's side in the MIAA. This year, final game, regular season, doubleheader. I think it's at Calvin. Both Hope and Calvin men's and women's teams. That'll be a great doubleheader. I'd love to get to it, but my schedule's starting to look a little difficult for that Saturday. We'll see what happens. Let's shift over to the NCAC North Coast Athletic Conference. This is the other one, certainly, to watch this season. Ohio Wesleyan winning the conference last year by 2 games over Worcester. Wabash was in the mix. DePaul certainly was there. All of them had 18-plus game seasons. The rest of the conference fell off. Wittenberg certainly had a horrible start to last season, but kind of came on in the last third to half the season and had a respectable 10-16 finish to the year. I think I told you on your show I thought Ohio Wesleyan peaked last year a little early. Not to say they're not going to be good this year. I think they just showed their cards. But, I mean, come on. When you look at the All-American list, three members of the Great Lakes are on there, and 2 of them come from Ohio Wesleyan.
Yeah. And keep in mind, Ohio Wesleyan last year, 16-2, they were picked 4th in that preseason poll last year. Kind of came out of nowhere and surprised some people. I don't think they're going to surprise anyone this year. Mike DeWitt's got a great squad, as you said, 2 preseason All-Americans, Claude Gray, Nate Axelrod. They've got a great team coming back this year. A lot of their big guys are obviously coming back. They're the favorite to win the North Coast Conference. And, of course, you can't have any a conversation about this conference without talking about Worcester. Worcester loses some guys, but you can always expect. I mean, you have to expect Worcester's going to have a 21 season. They always do. Steve Moore's one of the great programs in Division III basketball down there. I think they're going to be right in the mix as well. This conference is loaded from top to bottom. I think this is the toughest top to bottom conference in the Great Lakes region. There's the gauntlet of Wabash and DePaul. Allegheny, as you said, Wittenberg, I think they're going to be looking to be much better this year. Denison, and even Hiram finishing 9th out of 10 teams last year. They still had 11 wins overall. There's no easy games in this conference. The fact that Ohio Wesleyan did it with only 2 losses last year is amazing. I think we'll see a similar record from them this year. Worcester obviously in the mix. I've got DePaul, I believe, was 3rd, and then I think Wittenberg and Wabash coming to round out the top 5 in that conference. But at the end of the day, I think it's OWU and Mike DeWitt's squad.
Yeah, Hiram and Kenyon last year still finished with 5 wins in conference each. So the bottom is not as great as the top, but it's certainly not easy. I've said this on your show, and I've kind of said it on my Top 25 blog in case no one's caught it. I'm waiting for Worcester to finally live up to expectations. And I don't mean to be critical, but they're one of the winningest programs in Division III and certainly this century. But we've yet to see Worcester live up. I mean, we've seen them get to the Final Four, I think, once, and it was on a year I don't think anybody expected them. But other years, when they bring in a ton of talent, they always win 20 games. They always seem to have things come through their neck of the woods. They don't get very far. And, they've lost to some interesting teams in the NCAA tournament the last few years at their place, not on the road. We're talking about home losses. I'm waiting for Worcester to finally make their presence known. I almost feel like they just expect to win, and they don't rise up to the occasion. So I'm almost expecting Worcester not to live up to expectations. But you're right. I think this is Ohio Wesleyan's
I agree. And
to walk away with.
Agreed. And a quick note on Worcester, they did go out on the road for the first and second round last year.
That's true.
It was a second round loss to Marietta.
Thank you for that. I remember that now because Marietta had such a strong in-region record and whatnot that the conversation was that Worcester had kind of hurt themselves to not host those games. So you're right. But granted, they ran into a tough Marietta. I'm not taking last year with Worcester as a knock on them. I'm looking at a long-term effect here. We've gotten them to the Final Four, certainly, I agree. But it seems every single year, everyone just thinks Worcester is one of the best teams in the country. And I had a serious thought about not putting them in my top 25 this year because I'm just not sure they're living up to that hype. I think they're more name, kind of like teams that are always in your top 25s in other sports because of name more than what they're pulling off. But hey, I'd be happy to see them prove me wrong. Let's switch over to the HCAC. This one's going to be an interesting conference this year. Granted, last year was the first year they were in the Great Lakes region, the Heartland Collegiate Athletic Conference on the men's side. They've been on the women's side for a long time, and this is when they aligned the regions to be the same. Defiance last year tied for the top with Mount St. Joe. Mount St. Joe probably didn't get a lot of attention last year because of the Lauren Hill story on the women's side. The men kind of were forgotten, 19-7. Defiance at 22-7 last year loses a bit of that team. Will probably come back a little bit to earth. Whereas on the other side, Mount St. Joe's kind of right there in the mix. And this is a conference that's got a lot of wild cards right in the middle.
Yeah, I agree. Defiance getting all the attention last year. Of course, they had the big upset of Whitewater in the first round of the NCAA tournament. But yeah, Mount St. Joe's quietly had a really good year last year. They bring back a great core for Toby Kerrigan and his squad. Mount St. Joe's is my favorite. You mentioned Defiance loses some talent. They also are replacing a coach.
Yep.
They bring in a new coach this year. I expect Defiance to fall a couple of slots. So you ask the question, who replaces them? It's really an open game in the Heartland. Outside of Mount St. Joe's is the favorite. Rose Holman could be a real good squad. I think they could jump up. And another one I'm watching is Bluffton. Bluffton brings back Thane Recker, one of your preseason All-Americans. In the Great Lakes region, I think Bluffton could make a move into the top 4, maybe top 3. And then, of course, right in the middle of the pack, you've always got Hanover. Hanover had a disappointing year last year, I would argue.
Yeah.
Preseason favorites to win that conference last year. They finished middle of the pack. Transylvania is always an interesting squad. You never know what you're going to get from them. And then it's a bit of a fall-off back to Franklin, Manchester, and Earlham. But I think the top 5 spots, Mount St. Joe's is the favorite. I don't think they're a slam dunk favorite. But those top 5 spots could go in any order. You could arrange that in any way, and I don't think any of those scenarios would surprise me.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I mean, Mount St. Joe on top would be a great story for that program and that school. Rose Holman, you never know. Of course, also just lost their former coach, Jim Shaw, who is still part of the program in many ways, still went to games. You want to see how they rally behind that a little bit. Those players certainly remember Jim well. Transylvania, my buddy Brian Lane, I'm waiting for him to break out again. You're kind of waiting for them to relive the success of not that long ago. And Hanover, you're right, kind of a disappointing year last year. They'd love to break the mold there. HCAC could be a wide open tournament or season this year, fun to watch. Over on the PAC, this one's been St. Vincent kind of in the driver's seat for a number of years. Finished 2 games up on Waynesburg last year, but they were 5 games up on them in the overall record. Is anybody, Waynesburg, Thomas More, Bethany, Thiel, anybody else in this conference even going to be able to compete with St. Vincent?
I hate before we even play a game to say no, but St. Vincent I think is easily the biggest slam dunk favorite of any of the conferences in the Great Lakes region, much like Thomas More is on the women's side. DP Brown, interesting scheduling philosophy that they've gone with this year. As we can figure, the PAC is probably going to be a one big conference as it usually is.
Yeah.
And I think he knew he was going to have a good squad this year, bringing back almost everyone off the conference tournament championship team last year. They've gone out and scheduled really, really tough out of conference. They got Randolph, Macon, Marietta, Catholic, a great squad. That's on the road. And then they go out to Las Vegas to play in your guys' D3 Hoops tournament. You'll see Mary Hart and Baylor, Ramapo, and Calvin as well. I like the philosophy taken here. If things go wrong here in the non-conference, they pick up, 4 or 5 losses. I would much rather a team, you can always go and win your conference tournament championship. There's always an automatic bid out there to get to the tournament. I'd rather a team come in with 18, 19 wins. It's really been through the grinder, than a team that's got 2, 3 losses coming in having played nobody. I think they'll be ready for the tournament a lot more than somebody that's untested. Outside of St. Vincent, I think Thomas More could be up there that could give a challenge. Of course, Bethany is always a challenger in the pack. But again, St. Vincent, they should run away with this conference. Will they pick up a loss or 2? Probably. But over the course of a conference season, I don't see anyone sticking with them.
And then let's switch over to the Allegheny Mountain Collegiate Conference, the AMCC, another conference that moved ahead of the realignment. Penn State Barron, the class of this group at 17-1 last year, 23-4 on the season. They have not played as of yet this season. Medaille, though, and Hilbert made their presence known last year. Hilbert won 21 games, finished 13-5 in the conference. Medaille was 19-8 and 14-4. Then you got Pitt, Greensburg, Bradford, Dieuville, Monoliosis, Franciscan, Altoona, and La Roche. It's just kind of in there in the conference. It's very similar to the PAC, where it's probably going to be Barons, Deleuze, but at the same time, Medaille and Hilbert have made it at least a little bit more interesting on top.
I'm going to disagree. The coaches had Penn State Barron as number one in the preseason polls. I actually had them in the bottom half of the conference. Penn State Barron graduated almost everyone off of last year's 17-1 team. Yeah. They had their top junior not come back to the team as well. Speaking with Coach Nyland, he thinks they may be starting 3 freshmen this year up in Erie. I think they're going to fall back quite a bit, at least to the middle of the pack. Hilbert's my team, my pick here in the Allegheny Mountain. As you said, 13-5 in the conference last year, 21-7 overall. They bring back a lot of talent. I got them at the top of the conference. Pitt Greensburg right behind them also brings back a good core. I think they'll make a jump into the top 3, maybe top 2 of that conference. And, of course, Medaille, Mike Blaine will want to show that conference tournament title last year wasn't a one-year thing. They lost their top scorer as well. This is, we talk about the Heartland Conference being wide open. This, to me, is the most wide open of the Great Lakes conferences. I can see any of 4 or 5 teams winning this conference, and it wouldn't surprise me. It should be an interesting year. And, of course, you got Dieuville, Malocious, Franciscan, Penn State, Altoona, and La Roche. La Roche had a pretty bad year last year, 1-24 overall. They'll be looking to get back into the mix in that conference as well. But, we talk about when I was putting together my preseason polls, this was the most difficult for me to put together. And sometimes you just got to take a swing at it and go with it. And, it should be a wild year in the Allegheny Mountain, and I'm not sure how they're going to come out.
Talking to Ryan Whitnable, Great Lakes region reporter here, also host of This Week in Great Lakes Basketball. We'll talk about that in a moment, but quickly, got a few top 25 ranked teams, and we won't have a new poll for another week. But Mount Union was sitting 7th. Obviously, has already suffered a loss this opening weekend. Ohio Wesleyan 13th, skipped over Babson, or Marietta, I should say, by accident, at number 11. Hope sitting at 16. Worcester sitting at 20. Certainly well represented in the Great Lakes. But this region's always known for getting a dark horse. Ohio Wesleyan certainly was part of that equation last year. Trine was part of that equation. You always get a dark horse that's going to pop up. Is there anybody who's just kind of lurking that you're like, watch out for them later?
Yeah, I think we have to go to the MIAA. Trine could be one of those teams that kind of surprises where we're getting to January and February. Don't be surprised if they're neck and neck with Hope, and we're talking about an MIAA conference championship game between those two. In the OAC, we may see somebody come outside of that top 3. I'm watching Wilmington. You mentioned Capital. I think Capital is a team to watch as well this year. Outside of those two, I think it's going to be the usual players in the Great Lakes. Ohio Wesleyan, Mount Union, Marietta's kind of established themselves, Worcester. But outside of those two, again, Trine, Capital, maybe a Wilmington are my dark horses in the region.
Very good. Ryan, we talk about the fact you have a podcast that covers Great Lakes basketball. Tell everybody a little bit about it, how long you've been doing it, et cetera.
Yeah, this is the second year of the podcast. Started last year with just following the Ohio Athletic Conference. I'm a graduate of Marietta College and kind of did a week-by-week analysis and commentary on the conference. And this year kind of wanted to expand the footprint into the Great Lakes region. We have a once-a-week show. Usually it's on Sunday nights. Obviously, with all the conference previews and everything, I wanted to take this weekend off and sort of let some games play out. But weekly commentary on the region. I like to have a coach on every week. Last week we had yourself on the show for some analysis. A couple weeks before that, we had an NCAA referee on the show talking about some of the new rules changes. Every Sunday night we like to talk Great Lakes basketball. Hoping down the line we get some student athletes involved on the show as well. And obviously as we get towards January and February, we'll be talking regional rankings and pool C bids and all of that good stuff. But yeah, you can find it at greatlakesbasketball.podbean.com. Or, if you want to talk Great Lakes basketball, Twitter handle is OAC B-Ball Show. But something we're hoping to grow, and I have something I have fun with, and it's something that hopefully will be useful to listeners, just as your show is on a national level.
I was just going to say, don't grow too national on me, okay?
Yes, yeah. I have no ambition to have a national show at this point in time. It's enough work as it is with just a region.
Hey, I wasn't thinking when I did it, so don't worry about it. Hey, more coverage of Division III student athletes is always a good thing and something I certainly endorse. So, hey, Ryan, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Always give guests the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those watching?
Yeah, we talk about the national level. Augie's number one to start the year, but I think it's another wide open year in Division III basketball on the men's side. I think that's what makes Division III so fun. I implore people to go out, support your local Division III college, support the athletes. The thing I love about it the most is the true student-athlete aspect of the game. It's great fans, great athletes, and great basketball, and hopefully it's a great year of basketball.
Absolutely. Well said, Ryan. Thank you so much. I know we'll catch up with you later in the season, and enjoy the start.
Thanks, Dave.
Ryan Whitnable joining us on the show. Appreciate him taking the time. Check out his podcast. Certainly fun to hear from another voice, as it were. Certainly someone who's a little bit more ingrained into that region. Certainly to get what's going on. So Ryan, thank you for coming on. Got to wrap up the show here. Got a few more bits and pieces to cover and a little bit of news. Make sure you stay with us for the final break here. You're watching Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com, the National Association of Basketball Coaches. More Hoopsville right after this.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Division III allows you to be able to give yourself to other things. Not even just participate in them, but really get involved with them if you want to.
There's a lot of interaction. It's not just sitting back, taking notes. You're actually doing hands-on things and better preparing yourself for your major.
Choosing a Division III school, I've had the opportunity to develop my leadership skills and to be more involved on campus.
Division III in athletics, affords students the opportunity not only to participate in intercollegiate athletics at a competitive level, but also gives them the opportunity to, engage in the other interests in their campus and in their lives outside of that sport and outside of the academics on the campus.
And to have opportunity to have time to join clubs and being able to play basketball, it allows you to just be able to do everything you want to do. I wouldn't change it for the world.
And welcome back to this Sunday edition of Hoopsville. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you got any questions for us as we wrap things up, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us hoopsville at D3Hoops.com or join us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Hoopsville. We talk about all the craziness going on. Franklin and Marshall nearly losing today to Oneonta State, needing overtime to win. Nebraska Wesleyan. If you missed the news in the offseason, Nebraska Wesleyan is going all in Division III. They're going to do away with their split with the NAIA. They're going to join the Iowa Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, the IAC, next year. Got a little taste of their conference today against, Buena Vista. Beat Buena Vista. By the way, we shouldn't be too surprised. Nebraska Wesleyan, it isn't that bad a squad. They've made it to Salem, folks. Won national championships. But they beat Buena Vista today, so congratulations to them. 109-104. I don't remember either team designed to be a high, potent offense. At least Brian Van Haften didn't tell us that was his squad last week when we had him on the show Thursday. But lo and behold, Buena Vista sitting there with a loss to Nebraska Wesleyan today, 109-104. Emory's at halftime against Birmingham Southern as we speak, though I'm going to double-check that real quick as we're speaking. Yeah, they've got that one in control right now. So it looks like Emory will get a win there. And we talked about Wesley beating Virginia Wesleyan. We'll not talk to Ryan Scott tonight. We are going to get Ryan Scott on the show Thursday. Ryan's going to be at the Hoopsville Classic along with me and several others from D3 Sports coming up at Stevenson University this coming week. Games are Friday and Saturday. We will preview it on Thursday. We'll also talk to Gary Stewart, as we always do, on that show. Gary, obviously the head coach at Stevenson, he and I help or do a lot of the work, put that tournament together. So we will have Gary on the show, talk about the upcoming Hoopsville Classic. We'll have Ryan Scott on the air to talk about this North Carolina Wesley beating Virginia Wesleyan game, and a little bit more about the Mid-Atlantic that he will be writing for this season. We'll also talk to women's basketball committee chair from Wisconsin Whitewater, Carrie Carollo, will join us on the show. We'll get her take on being committee chair this year and what to expect on the women's side. I'll tell you now, slight differences in interpretation on some of the stuff that they work with. I won't give too much away, but that .03 to 2 games at the men certainly, I don't want to say they've bought into it, but have certainly felt there's strong indications to use it in a good way. And again, .03 to 2 games doesn't mean .06 to 4 games and .09 to 6 games. It's not a straight line necessarily, but when it's close like that, women have a different point of view. We'll get that from Carrie when we talk to her next week. We'll actually be talking to her ahead of Thursday. So if you have questions for our committee chair, get them to us ahead of time. You can do it via Twitter at D3Hoopsville or using the hashtag Hoopsville. You can do it via email, hoopsville@d3hoops.com, or you can do it via Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. I'm trying to think if there were some other games to mention. On the women's side, Catholic women lost the other day. I wanted to make sure. I knew I was going to forget that one if I didn't mention it. By the way, George Fox women had a close one with Cal Lou on opening night. So, it's been a little bit of an odd start to the season. I think we had some games that people just didn't expect, or teams are coming out a little bit sluggish. I'm not really sure the exact reasons for it all. And I certainly can't go through all these. But, for example, Ursinus beat Stevens. You're probably going, well, that's a random game to pick, Dave. But, listen, Stevens has been in the mix in some way, shape, or form for a while in the Empire 8. Granted, last year they were 12-13 and 8-8 in the conference, but the year before they were 18-10, 10-4. The year before that, 22-6, 11-3, 19-5, 10-3. I'm going backwards. Last time they were at 500 was 2009. They've only been that close to 500 twice since 2007. So Stevens has usually had a pretty good squad, but they dropped their opening game to Ursinus 83-80. Ursinus showed some signs at the end of last season of maybe finally coming back to the heyday that they've had. Now, granted, that's a long walk right now, but the Centennial Conference is an interesting one to watch this season. We'll talk more about it with Ryan on Thursday, but, is Dickinson's loss to Cabrini, does that mean Dickinson isn't as good as we thought? Hopkins lost some really good talent, but there's a lot of people who think they could be right back in the mix at the top. F&M needed overtime to get past Oneonta State. What does that mean for F&M? Remember now, F&M surprised everybody and went on a tear to start the season 12-0 last season. That was definitely premature for what they have for talent. But, there's a lot of that you got to figure out. Could Ursinus actually be in the mix in the Centennial this year? A game like that against Stevens certainly makes you take pause. But, again, we've had a bunch of crazy games to start this season. I don't know. I can't read into it. Every once in a while we get some crazy starts. But there's been a lot of, games to start this season. I mean, come on. William Patterson thumped Mount Union. Didn't see that. I mean, I knew Mount Union was good and I knew William Patterson was good. They're both in my top 25 and somewhat close to each other. But 22 points? By the way, Ursinus came back and lost to Scranton. 71-62, but there's some who saw that and went, Scranton's not that good. I don't know. I don't think Scranton's going to be as good as last year. I think some people, for some reason, think they will be. I don't see Scranton being as good as last year. They've got a good inside presence, but I have yet to see Scranton be able to use that inside presence to their advantage. They got past her sinus by 9, and from what I heard, it wasn't pretty. They'll have a good test coming up. Scranton's got Ithaca coming up, and then Hobart. We'll see what happens. That's on the men's side. So crazy, not craziness, but definitely some interesting results to start this season. And it's going to be something we're going to be talking about in February. We're going to have games when it comes February. We're going to be like, oh, you remember that in November? Could that haunt them? By the way, that Mount Union-William Patterson game, we will be talking about it in February. You know why? Because there's going to be 2 regionally ranked opponents who have results against regionally ranked opponents. That's going to come back. That could do a ton of good for William Patterson. I don't think it'll hurt Mount Union as much. They're going to have a bunch of regionally ranked opponents. But in the past, the Atlantic has suffered with their teams not having a lot of regionally ranked opponents on their resumes. And you heard that in the Brooklyn conversation about the CUNYAC. So that William Patterson win over Mount Union is going to come back and be really good for the Pioneers when we're talking about them in February. And, of course, in March. That's going to do it for us tonight. Again, a reminder, on Thursday, we'll have the women's committee chair, Carrie Carollo from Wisconsin Whitewater, on the show. We'll talk to her about being committee chair, what the committee is expecting from their regional committees this year and what they expect overall. And again, that a little bit of a different interpretation than what the men have on some of the same criteria. We'll also talk to her about her team in the conference, certainly, and what she expects. Talk to Gary Stewart from Stevenson, previewing the Hoopsville National Invitational Classic, the 4th annual. Talk to him about that, and talk to him about the team's start to the season, which now includes a loss to York. They will play Goucher on Tuesday. We'll also hear from Ryan Scott on Thursday as well, a little bit of a look at the Mid-Atlantic and a little bit more in depth. Plus some other announcements. We'll get some other guests lined up as well. May jump down to the ODAC, talk women's basketball there for the first time. But all in my head, got to send out the invites and see who's available. If you have any questions for us or like to interact with us, don't forget on Twitter, @D3Hoopsville, or using the hashtag Hoopsville. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/Hoopsville. You can always email us, Hoopsville, @D3Hoops.com. I want to thank our guests on tonight's show. Brooklyn's Rick Micallef joining us. UT Tyler women's basketball coach Hansen joining us. Kenrda Hassell, we appreciate her taking the time. Also, Matt Logie from number 3 Whitworth. Watch out for the Pirates this season. They could be fun to watch. I'm not sure what to expect. I'm looking forward to seeing them in Vegas. Also want to thank Ted Riverso from Augsburg. I want to thank him for coming on. For some reason, called him Joe twice today. Once on Twitter and once on the website. Had to change it to Ted. I'm not sure where Joe came from. But I want to thank him for coming on the air. Nice to have him. And I want to thank Ryan Whitnable as well for joining me talking Great Lakes basketball. Thank you for tuning in. Our Sunday shows in the month of November and December. And we will make an announcement. Don't have a decision by the end of the show. Don't have a decision whether we'll be on the air Sunday or we'll be on the air Thanksgiving Sunday. I'll promise you this. We're not going to be on both Sundays. We'll pick one of them. So we'll have one more Sunday show between now and the end of November, and then we'll be on the air for 4 Sundays, I believe. Is that how the calendar works? So I think it's 4 of the next 5 Sundays we'll be on the air. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So for the next 5 Sundays, we will be on the air. Whether it's this Sunday right after the Hoopsville Classic or the following Sunday right after Thanksgiving, one of those 2 will be on the air, and then we'll be on the air the 6th, 13th, and 20th of December as well. As far as Thursday shows, we'll be on the air next week. We will obviously not be on the air Thanksgiving week. We'll then be on the air the 3rd and the 10th for the Thursday shows. We will not be on the air the 17th. We'll be tied up with football responsibilities, and obviously we will not be on the air on Christmas Eve. Going to be booking our travel shortly for the Vegas tournament as well, and obviously a lot of responsibilities there. That's going to do it for the show. Thank you for tuning in. Certainly appreciate your enjoying the show with us. And we'll look forward to seeing you back here Thursday, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Don't forget, you can watch the show on demand on YouTube or listen to it on a podcast on SoundCloud, which apparently can also be found on iTunes. Though I'll freely admit I can't find it myself. It just pops up on my iTunes feed. I will do more research to try and figure out where the heck that has gone to. But in the meantime, we hope you're enjoying the show nonetheless. And let us know when you are. Got a very nice tweet earlier today, or actually it was yesterday, from somebody who was watching the show Certainly meant a lot to us. I'm looking for it. I apologize. I had it here, and then my Twitter reset on me. Oh, I'm looking in the wrong column. That would be helpful if I was looking in the correct column. Here it is. Mike Reed says, Dave McHugh is brilliant. Well, jury's out on that, folks. I have a law degree, and this new rules stuff dialogue is actually interesting and enjoyable. Great job. Listen, I only say that because don't forget we did do the show on the rules changes. Very in-depth conversations with members of the Rules Committee and an athletics director about all the rule changes. Please check it out when you get an opportunity. It's certainly worth the watch. And certainly maybe allow you to understand the rules better this season and maybe understand how those rules come together as well. You've been listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com, National Association of Basketball Coaches. Appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here on Thursday. Good night, everybody.